Tommy Cindric talks about the unique jobs his parents held and what prompted him to get into law enforcement.
I came from a family of we worked for acronymed agencies. Both my mom and dad were NSAers. It was kind of just, as I said, it's kind of foretold. You kind of just follow in some shape, manner, or form in your parents' footsteps a little bit. But I kind of started out as a cop. I kind of went that direction because I had paid attention and saw the homicide of three police officers that really had a profound effect on me. One was Marty Ward from Baltimore City, who was killed in an undercover operation. One was Trooper Ted Wolf, who was killed on the side of 95 by a crew out of D.C. or person tied to a crew out of D.C. And then the other one was Kiki Camarena.
Welcome to Game of Crimes. Welcome back to Game of Crimes. I am the ultimate host, especially of this particular episode, Morgan Wright, here literally with my partner in crime.
Steve Murphy, but why this particular episode? What's that about?
I got to keep it fresh, got to keep it different each time.
Okay. I'm with you. And by the way, you can call me Murph.
You can call me Murph.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Just call you late for dinner. All right. Hey, real quickly, before we get started, just Victor Avila's episode, man, killer. And I'm not trying to make a play on words. I mean, just we got so many good comments back about that, and just the story, and just to hear it from him, and then to hear about the new information about what may have been in the cargo of that, Steve.
Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable, and it's unbelievable that if this works out and it's true, heads need to roll.
That is for sure. And it reminds me, too, of Jay Dobbins, too, the way he kind of got screwed over and Victor got screwed over. Here are people who put their lives on the line. Literally, they've been shot. Both of these guys were shot. Both these guys did their duty. And yet this is how they get treated. I'm telling you, Steve. Again, it's never the agency. You know what it is? It's the people in the agency. An agency doesn't do anything to people. It's people who do things to people. So, But anyway, man, and plus, too, we put that episode out on Valentine's Day, the 14th, and the 15th was the anniversary of Jaime Zapata being killed in the line of duty in a foreign country, in Mexico, serving his country.
Yeah, and we also just recently found out that Victor kind of sandbagged us and didn't tell us a couple things he's known for.
Son of a bitch.
I mean, this is something to be proud of.
He holds the world's record for the longest pistol shot.
Yep.
2010 yards.
If you want to see it, go on, what is that, YouTube, I think it is?
You know what I think I may do, Steve? I'll update the webpage and I'll put that link on there about how Victor sandbagged us. Because what did you say it took? It took 12 seconds for the round to hit the target?
11.7 seconds. And the video's there. You can see it. It's just Google up Victor Avila
world record. Yeah, world record, and that should pull it up, man.
And what he also didn't tell us is a year before he'd set a previous record with a 9mm. This was a 10mm shot. So
we're gonna have to have him back on the episode and just haul him before the inspection board here.
That's right. You held out on us, brother.
All right. Well, hey, guys, we hope you enjoyed that. And we hope you enjoy what's coming up. So if you do like what you heard and you do like what you're about to hear, just head on over to Apple and Spotify. Give us those 5 stars. It really helps out a lot. Head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. A lot of good pictures that Victor gave to us, that the Suburban that those guys were driving that day all shot up, the cargo in the back. We've got some really good stuff coming up, too, on future episodes. So always go over to the website, gameofcrimespodcast.com, and look, and with Victor's book, agentunderfirebook.com, the link to his book is on there. Got to go download it and read it. I mean, what a true American hero. So also follow us on the thing called social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But where you got to be, we got some great stuff coming out, man. Patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Our new segment on 911, What's Your Emergency? We got a lot of great feedback on that. And we're going to do something exclusive coming up here with Chris and Dave, the guys who were the inspiration for season 3 of Narcos,
Yeah.
and taking down the Cali cartel. So that one, you're going to have to be up a level to get access to this one, because this one's going to be exclusive just to Guardian of the Realm and Warden of the Throne levels. But I'm telling you, but we've got so much other great content out there, our random surprise, our case of the month, things like that. Just really good stuff that are going to be out there. So you guys got to be over there to get on it. If you also want to support us just with the one-off, go to paypal.com and use our email, gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com or paypal.me/gameofcrimes, whatever makes it easier for you to support this show. Hey, by the way, speaking of a show, this is a show about crime, Murph. I didn't know if you knew that. We talk about bad people do. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. We take the story seriously, but
we will never take ourselves serious. We're going to have some fun. We're going to bring some cool guests, but we're going to have some fun.
And one of the first ways we have fun, what is it, Murph? Guess what time it is?
It's time for Small Town Police Blotter.
It's the 5-0 coming to get you. And all of these, again, here we go again. All of these come from you, our players out there. So the first one comes from Duke. He goes by Duke Silver on Instagram, but I think the guy is in the profession, because he was actually does something with the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force down there in Dallas. He knew about the hostage standoff we talked about in Colleyville. Cool. So he's got, as soon as we get our P.O. box up and running, he's got a challenge coin for us coming our way. But anyway, here's what Duke sent. This is one, a couple of folks had sent it in to us. Also, Emily Field did too. So we got this from Duke and Emily Field via our Game of Crimes fan page. Steve, and I think you saw this story, right?
I'm not sure.
An Oregon woman was duped into thinking she was training to be a DEA agent for almost a year.
Yeah, boy, I tell you what, P.T. Barnum said it best. There's a sucker born every minute.
This unidentified woman who wasn't charged was given a fake badge and photo. This dude by the name of Robert Edward Golden tricked her into thinking she was training to be a DEA agent for a year. They found him with fake badges, tactical vests, and a rifle that was actually a BB gun. When caught, the man told agents he and his trainee had the equipment because they were into cosplay. I think that's costume play. It's a portmanteau, as they say. It's a combination between costumes and play. Mm-hmm. She thought she was training to be a DEA agent. He is accused, and the way they found him was apparently there was a traffic stop, or there was a sergeant from a police department walked up and saw this stuff in his trunk and said, "Hey, where do you got this?" And he said, "We're feds. We're both on the job." It's like, we've seen enough fake badges in our time, man.
That's not DEA. That's DUH. Duh.
Yeah. Anyway, so hey, man. So
unbelievable.
By the way, what is this secret Jason Bourne training? Anyway, hey, our next one comes from, he has been renamed. It's Logan Donut. He wants to go by Dorout, but it's Dorhout. I think it's Dorout. What would you say it was? Dorhout? A donut. It's Logan Donut. Just forget about it. This is your new name. Martin County Sheriff's Office. He says, and it's true, no title could explain this case, but the details, well, it's best to just read on. Train versus vehicle versus house. A 38-year-old Bradford Weitzel of Port St. Lucie, that's down in your area. This is another fucking Florida dude. Told Martin County Sheriffs he couldn't find his car after leaving a Martin County bar this morning, so he stole one in a good faith effort to locate his own. Oh. He somehow ended up on the train tracks. That's when he claims the vehicle he stole suddenly stopped dead on the tracks as a train was coming. So he got out and ran. The train hit the car, catapulting it into a nearby home where the homeowners were sound asleep. Fortunately, nobody was injured, although a driverless car smashing through the side of your home clearly is going to waken you up.
Oh, jeez.
By the way, Weitzel continued on to a fruit stand where he vandalized the business, then tried to steal a forklift.
Because that would outrun the police that are pursuing him here shortly.
Oh, yeah. In the end, he said he thought it was best to flag down the responding deputies to let them know he was still looking for his car.
Oh, what? Every time we hear one of these news stories, it just brings a whole new meaning to the word idiot.
Tell you what, the ID10 key is alive and well on this dude's keyboard, man. Hey, and this next one, though, this is pretty cool, too. This comes to us from Heidi Overman via our Game of Crimes fan group from Washburn County, Wisconsin, population 15,582. Salute. This comes from the Washburn County Scanner. It's not so much the call, it's some of the comments that follow. 829 being dispatched to the city of Shell Lake for a report of a heavier set male individual intoxicated. Caller reports he appears to be masturbating in the middle of the street near Klopp's bar.
Oh.
So apparently somebody started tagging this guy named Christopher. He goes, again, I'm not in Shell Lake. And then some lady named Jenny replies back, well, since it's only 15 degrees outside, do you think there's shrinkage involved with the said act being done in the middle of the street? Christopher, can you be our on-the-scene reporter for this one?
At least you
shrinkage.
Got a good sense of humor there.
Shrinkage. You got to watch the Seinfeld episode with George Costanza and Shrinkage.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, by the way, Steve, are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go.
All right.
This is it. What year was it?
Yeah.
I got to get some echoing stuff. I forgot to do this last time, but it's like, hey, you know what? So sue me. We didn't do what year was it?
I didn't hear a single complaint about it either.
And actually shortened up the episode anyway. So this comes to us from the Gazette in Montreal, Quebec, not Quebec. It's Quebec, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes on November 9th. You just got to tell me what year was it. So let me just read you the quick little headlines. Italy's kidnap industry spreads across Europe. Headline, Rome. Europe's rich people are being forced to live with bodyguards and step up other safety measures as kidnappings for ransom, once just an Italian disease, spread to other countries. In Italy, where the newfound criminal industry is referred to as Kidnapping Inc., the number of kidnappings this year reached a record 63 yesterday, when three armed men seized Pietro Fiocchi, a munitions factory owner and town official in Lecco. The men pushed him into a waiting car as he left work in the northern Italian town. They demanded $12 million payments for the Duke Massimiliano Grazioli as he toured his estate near Rome. So they were getting a bunch of money out of this. So more significant than the number of kidnappings in Italy is the fact that this crime has spread elsewhere. So Steve, this comes to us out of the Gazette, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. You have to tell me, was it November 9th, 1977, November 9th, 1967, or November 9th, 1957?
It's got to be 77, because if they're asking for $12 million, that's a buttload of money. Right?
Well, I guess so. I guess you get one right. Jesus.
Boy, I'm kicking butt this year. Woo-hoo. You guys can cheer for me now.
Cheer for the Murph man. Cheer for the Murph man. Well, hey, cheer for this next episode too, because we got coming up. I guarantee you, this will set the records for the most number of F-bombs ever in one episode.
Oh, man, this is great. Tommy Cindric's coming on here, retired DEA agent, one heck of an investigator, probably one of the best that's around, or that was around. He's retired now. But the guy that they went after, this Paul LeRoux, you know what? If you can, afterward, you'll find the book on our website, right, Morgan?
No, actually, we don't. We only put books on our website that are written by our guests. So, but I may put a link in there.
Okay.
It won't be in our book sections, but but it's Hunting LaRue by Elaine Shannon. She also wrote, like you said, the one about Kiki Camarena as well too. She's done a good job with these books.
Yeah, she's very pro law enforcement, and she doesn't hold back, man. She does her research. She's a fantastic writer, but I don't want to spoil the story about Paul. But these guys went after this guy who is. He was a savant when it came to computer crimes, to cybersecurity. Started out legally selling pharmaceuticals, made a ton of money on that, but that wasn't enough. The greed factor kicked in. This guy was a true nerd, but he was a genius as well. And they just went out and somebody said, you can't touch this guy. Nobody can touch this guy. And they reached out and they touched him.
Literally, Tommy said, hold my beer. And this is a guy, and it just wasn't pharmaceuticals. We're going to talk about mercenaries.
Mm-hmm.
Murder for hire, nuclear stuff, arms sales to Iran. I mean, this dude, if there's a definition of dangerous in the dictionary, this guy's picture would be listed in it.
Yeah.
Because of the stuff he did.
Even bringing methamphetamine out of North Korea. I mean, this has got it all. You guys are going to love this episode.
Yeah, and that's why we said that makes sense now why Kim Jong-un, dropped those, 7,500 pounds, man. He's been doing his own meth.
Well, and I'll tell you what, you'll see as we get into the episode, we had a really hard time getting Tommy to come out of his shell and being open up and honest with us. If we had a beep button, it would be a continuous
It would
beep.
be one long beep for the whole episode, yeah.
But you're going to love Tommy. He's out there. He's not bashful. I mean, he's out there doing God's work, and he's earning the money. You taxpayers in the United States, you're getting your money's worth when Tommy Cindric was on the job. So,
and there's only one way to find out, and that's for me to ask you, Murph.
Yeah.
Are you ready to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the game of crimes?
Truly, everyone. Get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Here comes Tommy Cindric. Let's go.
Well, we told you a little bit about him in the intro, and there's nothing like seeing him in person except it's kind of dark in his house right now. For a while there, we thought Tommy was in fucking witness protection, man. still hiding from the bad guys and Mr. LeRoux. So hey, man, Tommy, before we get started, Tommy Cindric, former DEA, welcome to Game of Crimes.
Hey,
Woohoo!
thanks.
Welcome, Tommy. Glad to have you on here, brother.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, well, we had to do this early because the message we got is that if we try and contact you usually after 2 p.m. any afternoon, you're out hunting.
That's pretty accurate from pretty much September through about late January in Maryland. It goes, the hunting season runs till the end of January, beginning of February. And I normally won't work past then. And ties in with my no work Friday since I retired. So,
which was
That's a man who's got a plan.
Which was a continuation of Murph's plan when he was, working no work Friday either. And we had all of those guys, right? I love the ones, hey, man, remember, you always get those people who say, I always give 100% at work. It's like, yeah, right. I've seen your 100% at work. 15% on a Monday, 12% on a Tuesday, 14% on a Wednesday. Yeah.
I had a great guy I worked with when I was at Baltimore. I kind of got banished up to Intel for a while when I got in trouble. And I'm sitting up there and he says, look, I know who you are. Don't mess up my good gig. And I was like, what's that mean? He goes, I go get coffee at 9. I come back, I move some papers. I go get lunch. I come back, I move some papers. I go get coffee again. He says, I come back and move some papers and go home. I don't need you messing this up. So
that's right.
Well, to talk about how you got to that point and how you actually messed it up for him, because I know you did, we got to start off like we do with everybody. So Tommy, what the hell possessed you to get into law enforcement?
I kind of always had this leanings toward law enforcement. There were.
Was most of it because of your interaction with law enforcement as a youth?
Well, there was some of that. Okay, and I came from a family of we worked for acronymed agencies. Both my mom and dad were NSAers. It was kind of just, as I said, it's kind of foretold. You kind of just follow in some shape, manner, or form in your parents' footsteps a little bit. But I kind of started out as a cop. I kind of went that direction because I had paid attention and saw the homicide of 3 police officers that really had a profound effect on me. One was Marty Ward from Baltimore City, who was killed in an undercover operation. One was Trooper Ted Wolf, who was killed on the side of 95 by a crew out of D.C. or person tied to a crew out of D.C. And then the other one was Kiki Camarena. And they had profound impacts on me and kind of pushed me in a direction. Now I veered off here and there. I walked on and played some college football, or tried to play some college football. It wasn't very good. And then I went to professional wrestling school and, spent a little time doing that.
Wait a minute. You held back on us during the pre-call. What do you mean? What was your stage name? The Flying Fundini, or what was it?
Everybody always laughs. My heritage is Croatian, so they always go, you were going to be the Croatian sensation.
Oh, God.
The crazy slob.
Yeah, but the reality was I was going in and out of Texas, and I was at a school run by a guy named Gentleman Chris Adams, who's now deceased, out of the Sportatorium. And, my whole gimmick I wanted to be kind of this white trash guy, from Texas or down south, and just kind of play that genre up. And, that was kind of the gig I was doing. And,
Man, you'd have to change your accent because that's not a Southern accent.
No, it's not. It's not. But I loved it down there. I loved Texas. I loved hanging out down there. Got to meet the Von Erichs. Got to meet, Stone Cold Steve Austin actually was in the wrestling school.
Stone Cold Steve Austin. He has done well for himself post wrestling.
Absolutely. He was in the wrestling wrestling school I was at the time. He was older than me, and really on the verge of stardom at that time. And so it was pretty cool. You got to see these guys that I had watched on TV. I'd grown up watching it. I loved it. I still love it. I think I got to be honest with you. I think it's more real than any sport you watch at this point, and it's definitely more real than U.S. politics. So I'd rather watch that.
But I will give him credit for one thing. Obviously, it's entertainment, but these are athletes. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did professional wrestling. I mean, you've got people with serious athletic skills that were doing professional wrestling, because even though some of it, might be choreographed, these are still freaking moves. I mean, you're jumping off of ropes. You're doing these high-speed maneuvers. I mean, jumping over the top rope to hit a guy and land on a table. I mean, that you have to practice that a little bit.
You do, and it does hurt. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you, when I was at the DEA Academy, they ask you one of these things. They said, does anybody know how to fall? Right? And I go, I know how to fall. And they're like, you know how to fall? And you know how police they crouch you down and you learn how to tuck and fall backwards. I jumped up in the air and landed on my back, and the instructors were like, what the shit is that?
Who let this guy through the background?
The boy clearly has some brain damage. We need to reevaluate our criteria here.
Hey, anybody who knows me may agree with you just on that statement alone. Trust me.
That's funny.
Hey, let's go back a little bit too. Talk about your parents for a second, because there was a time, and one of the things we have in common, I spent some time teaching out at the National Cryptologic School at NSA on behavior analysis, blah, blah, blah. But I ran into guys, that was the first time they were actually allowed to have business cards, because the joke for so long was NSA stood for no such agency. So when your parents were growing up, did you know it was NSA?
We knew it was NSA because where I grew up, everybody in my neighborhood worked for NSA. They were all transplants, normally out of Pennsylvania. They were all either at NSA, CIA, or NASA, or one of those places. My dad never hid that he worked for NSA from us, but it was never openly.
What was his cover story for everybody else?
State Department.
That's everybody's cover story.
Yeah, when he traveled, that's what he traveled at, State Department. But and my dad was a really, really high overachiever. I think we chatted about this a little bit. I mean, valedictorian of a senior class in high school, went to Pitt on a ROTC scholarship. He comes from very meager beginnings. I'm only the second generation born here in the United States. They came over from Croatia, World War II-ish time, a little bit before, that kind of thing. So my dad couldn't have gone to college without a scholarship, became Brigadier General of Arnold Air, ended up in the U.S. Air Force, and was,
Hey, go back to that for a second, because that is a really high rank. You called it ROTC, ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps. I went through ROTC in college. What was the rank he got? Was in college, right? It was the ROTC rank. But why was that? What was the significance of having that rank?
He was like he was the head nationwide of this Arnold Air, Hap Arnold, and who was a legendary Air Force serviceman. And my dad just became the Brigadier General and ran the ROTC nationwide for that.
Did you have to salute when you came in then?
No, but my dad used to tell all my friends, you can call me by my first name, sir.
Well, that kind of begs the question, what happened to you, Tommy?
A lot.
Why didn't you go to the 3-letter route? I mean, why are you not a spook?
Or a spy,
Yeah.
Well,
if you folks could see the picture right now, he does look like a spy, like I said, because his lighting is terrible. All we see is kind of a face. It looks like one of those things on 60 Minutes when they're interviewing a deep cover. The only thing we're not doing is disguising his voice, because we can't see him.
I can move, but the problem is if I go downstairs, my dog may bark if the Amazon guys come. So you guys will be cutting this off quick.
No. We know what you look like from the pre-call. By the way, do you know what it is? You know what the condition's called when you order so many packages from Amazon you don't remember what you ordered?
What?
Primnesia.
Oh, jeez.
That's really bad.
I've got to get a mute button on this thing.
Maybe.
There is, Steve. Right to your left, you can mute yourself anytime you want.
We're not talking about me.
But back to our regularly scheduled podcast with Tommy. So why didn't you go down the spook route? Why didn't you go to CIA, go through the farm, go to NSA?
I considered all that. I considered going over to the CIA. Kind of the thing is when I came out of college, I kind of did, I was like every other kid who comes out of college with a bachelor's degree. I didn't know what the shit I wanted to do, really. I got the degree because my mom and dad told me I had to. My dad had been deceased at that time. He died when I was 20. So I had to figure things out. My mom was back working full-time at NSA. She was trying, my mom was 42 when my dad died. So she had to restart her life without him, which was a really monumental task. So she didn't, I don't want to say she didn't have time, but I was 22 years old, and she was like, you gotta start doing, you gotta do something. So, I went down to I tried to
move out, get a job.
Well, that was, yeah, it was 22. It was basically like, you've got some time, and then I'm either paying you're either paying rent here, or you're getting out of my house and paying rent somewhere else. So I ended up, I started looking at various options. I looked at the military. I had taken the ASVAB and was looking at that route. And then I gave myself a window, and I applied to 3 police departments. I applied to the Baltimore City Police Department because that's where my mom's family was originally from. I applied to the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. And I applied to Metro Dade because everybody wants to go to Metro Dade and be Sonny Crockett.
Sonny Crockett.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, this is 89, 90. You want to be Sonny Crockett.
We got a quick rule, too. You got to define every acronym. So you said ASVAB. If you don't know what it is, I remember what it is. Do you remember what it stood for?
I can't remember the exact.
Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Batteries. So you would go in, you would join, because I had to do that. I got into the reserve so I could get into ROTC. So you had to take the ASVAB. So it's a vocational aptitude battery. What are you good at? What are you doing? And based on those scores, that depends on what schools you get. So it sounds like the Army wasn't for you. The structure wasn't for you.
I didn't know they had a Tommy Bahama category in that test there, Morgan.
They did, and dude, I aced it. I maxed it out. In fact, everything I'm wearing today is Tommy Bahama.
Oh, geez. Hey, well, just so you know, I paid for this T-shirt. It's not free today.
It looks like it's free. But anyway, back to our regularly scheduled podcast.
See the year on it, right?
No, what is it?
2010. It's a little dated.
Have you watched it?
But I think everybody here is a bit dated. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that hurt. Okay. Anyway. This interview now has come to a close with Tommy. Thank you.
That's why we say we have a face for radio.
Hey,
you know what I mean, Tommy?
We're the ones that dish out the insults and the digs. You're supposed to take them. So anyway,
gotcha.
But good. Anyway, but go back. So you thought, did you ever get the paperwork for the CIA? Did you go through the application process at all?
No, I started applying when I applied to the police departments and the military. I got hired. By Metropolitan Police Department. They were the first ones to, they were the first ones to call me. So of course, you take the job that's first offered to you. I went into the academy class and.
Hey, real quickly, you were in Maryland at the time, and that's MPD. So what was the residency restriction, or how close did you have a requirement that you had to be so close within to the district?
25 miles. Baltimore City required you to live in the city. That's why they didn't take me, because when DC called them, they said, we would have hired him, but we can't hire him because he's not a Baltimore City resident.
Well, you're not, because you refused to move, right?
Yeah, I wasn't moving quite yet. I mean, I had family that lived there still, but, I was like, let's see what else happens. And, it was kind of funny. One of the funny stories with my background investigation with MPD was getting your background investigations done, you know how that is. You might get a good guy, you might get a bad guy. So I kept calling down there. This is, got to remember, this is 1989. There's no internet. There's none of this shit, right? So I called down there, and I'll never forget. I get Detective Goff. He was my background investigator, because they were yelling on the phone who had Cindric, right? So Goff finds me, he gets on the phone, he looks at my thing, and he goes, so you've lived in the same house your entire life? I said, yes. He goes, everybody in your neighborhood knows you? I said, yes. He goes, I'll be right out.
You've just made my life easy.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Hey, but did it cause an issue, though? I mean, like you said, you said you were first or second generation in the U.S.?
Second.
Second. All right. So your dad was there. Did it cause any issues with you being, your parents coming from Croatia? Did that affect your background at all?
It was my grandparents, and it didn't affect mine. My dad was always a little bit more when he first got hired at NSA. I remember them talking about it because my dad's family, you got to remember, this was the turnover where it wasn't Croatia, it was Yugoslavia, so it was a communist country. And my grandfather used to tell everybody that they could not write home, meaning his mother, who was my great grandmother, because if she did, it could hurt my dad's chances of getting into NSA or cause him problems on his background investigation. I laugh now, but this is the old days when they probably did check our mail, and if you don't think the federal government did that, just watch what they're doing now to us. So, I mean, I'm sure they were checking mail back then.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I said, it wasn't a big deal, but my dad was military, but we lived in Iran, so I actually had to answer some questions about Iran
Sure.
on my security clearance. But so anyway, so you get on MPD, the Metropolitan Police Department. What year was that? You said was
1990.
that 1990?
Yeah.
How long was your academy?
16 weeks.
Did you like the academy?
Well, I'll tell you. So the academy was an interesting place because you get the complete wide range of people when you go into a police department. And we had some people that had horrible educations and couldn't spell and write a complete sentence. And I mean, literally, we had spelling tests like spell handcuffs, spell arrest, so people could write basic reports at sometimes.
Wow.
I was completely bored, and there were a couple instructors who took pity on me and would pull me out of class and let me go work out and stuff, or let me go run with them. When it came to some of those classes, DC code, when you learn a DC law, that was fine. That was, everybody has to do that. But some of the silly, inane stuff was just, I was luckily, a couple instructors took some pity on me and realized that I was just kind of falling asleep in class at that point.
How big was your class?
25 people, 27
That
people.
doesn't seem like a lot for MPD.
Well,
small.
Here's the thing. Back then, it was just trying to get people through. And so as soon as you had enough to run a class, they were running 25 people in a class, if I remember correctly, and they were running 2 shifts. So to get you ready for shift work. So what you would do is you'd work 7 to 3 one week, and then the next week you'd work 3 to 11. So you'd come in and go 3 to 11 to the class. And so they were always running multiple classes. Classes were running all the time there to try and catch up, because DC, people forget DC is not what DC is today. This was a city that had 500 murders a year.
I was going to say the homicide rate was it was one of the most dangerous cities in the U.S.
Yeah, it had the highest homicide rate at the time. This is the towards the end of the Rayful Edmonds, Michael Gray, Murder Incorporated area there. It was a violent place. But when you're, and I can't, this sounds crazy, but when you're a 22-year-old kid full of testosterone and want to just run like bat out of hell, it's the greatest job in the world. You're running down drug dealers. You're responding to armed robberies. You're responding to a man with a knife, gun, shooting.
Well, the 911 operators always answered 911. Who shot who?
For me, it was when I got there and got on the streets, it was like my hand fit in a glove. I just belonged there.
Well, it was that kind of job at that time was designed for a younger person who had all of those years, had seen all of those things. I mean, you were fresh, you were ready to go burn a blue streak through the town. So,
they needed somebody that knew how to take a fall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like this was a time too, we didn't even have the equipment. I mean, if 2 of you went on the street, only one of you got a radio, and they'd say, "Don't leave your partner." If 6 of you went on the street, maybe 2 guys had a radio in your group. And the violence was so bad, we had something called the power shift, and we'd work from 7 at night till 3 in the morning. And they would put 5 of the most aggressive guys together, and they just put you in an area and you'd be crime suppression. And that's all you did. And
what was most of the crime fueled by during
drugs,
those?
drugs.
I mean,
it was the
heroin, crack, cocaine.
It was the crack cocaine era, but the area I worked also had, which was Potomac Gardens, had a good amount of heroin too. One side of the projects was cocaine and crack cocaine. The other side was heroin and speedballs, cocaine mixed with heroin.
Was it all gang controlled?
Nah, neighborhood control. DC's a different kind of thing. It's all little local neighborhood crews. If you would have been a gang leader and walked into those areas, the DC boys would have been like, "Get the hell out of here! You ain't from here." I mean, the DC's a unique area, and it was a fun place to work.
Well, this is during the Marion Barry days, also, wasn't it, when he was the mayor?
He was not the mayor then. It was right after he got caught smoking crack in the hotel room not long after.
On the FBI sting operation. We all remember seeing and there's another guy who figured out a way to resurrect his career, and come back again.
Look, Washington, D.C. is a place, if anybody hasn't figured it out, that likes to forgive people who make mistakes. Just look at all our presidents and everybody else. Mayor Barry was no different. And Mayor Barry was a brilliant politician. He made sure that public works, police, and teachers always got raises. That was his goal. And that's how he stayed in power so long. He was masterful at that. And he was always good to the police. I mean, I'll be honest with you, like you hear the old timers talk about it. They're like, he's a mess, but we keep getting raises.
But he's our mess, and he pays us. Hey, going back, so the reason I was asking that too, is this where you first started thinking about, hey, DEA or drugs and stuff based upon the amount of dope you were running into, or did that register with you at all during that time?
No, I always knew I wanted to go to DEA as a
Why?
federal. Drugs just fit me. And I'll be honest with you, I was heavily, heavily influenced by...
oh my God, I thought you were about to say I was heavily, heavily into drugs.
No,
I was going, wait a minute. Okay.
I was heavily influenced by the whole Sonny Crockett, Miami Vice thing. I mean, it was just such a really cool looking lifestyle, right? Like it looked exciting. It looked, and I was like, man, I want to live an exciting life. I mean, when I was in high school, one of my teachers gave me the book, The Bourne Identity. I hated school. He gave me The Bourne Identity. I tore through that. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to live an exciting life.
The original Robert Ludlum, I think, series.
Yeah. Yep.
Those are really interesting too, because it was such a fascination to live that kind of lifestyle. You're the secret agent, hopping from continent to continent. Except later on, we'll talk about it. Didn't exactly work that way. So the speedboats and the Hugo Boss. When we had Jay Dobbins on a couple episodes ago, when this one comes out, that's what he thought. He said, I'm going to be in these Hugo Boss suits like, Don Johnson, driving Ferraris. Instead, he's in a tank top, with cut off camouflage pants and driving a piece of shit Monte Carlo.
Yeah. My first car in New Jersey, a Delta 88, where the air conditioner didn't work, and I had to clean the chicken wings out from a supervisor who had the car before me and left them under the seat.
Nasty.
That's how glorious it was. And when you were doing surveillance, you went and looked for a tree so you could sit under the tree because they weren't going to pay to have the car fixed to get you air conditioning.
Well, before we hop ahead too far, so let's talk about that. So you said because of the Miami Vice and the Don Johnson, you wanted to go DEA. So how long were you on MPD before that bug hit you and you applied?
Well, I was on MPD for 2.5 years, and then I moved over into my hometown, Laurel, Maryland, and I became a police officer there. And I spent most of my time in working narcotics there and working undercover.
Why'd you move?
Well, so Sharon Pratt Kelly, who was the mayor at the time, was giving all the police officers a 10% cut in pay.
You mean in D.C.?
Yes. And
Dang.
so I said, I'm not doing this. This doesn't make any sense to me. And so one of my buddies, his brother was a lieutenant out there at Laurel. It was a smaller department, but I was like, I'll give it a shot for a while. And I went out there and I got to work narcotics almost the entire time. And,
why did you get to work narcotics? I mean, was it just they needed somebody, or that was you volunteered for it? How'd you end up in that?
Well, they needed somebody. They also needed somebody that had experience. And coming from DC, you get a lot of experience fast. I mean, as a uniformed patrolman walking a foot beat, I handled rapes, I handled murders, I handled armed robberies, drug dealing, and you name it, to a basic theft, to finding a stolen car, to you name it, you handled it. So you needed to have some sort of experience. I got more experience there in 2.5 years than probably a lot of guys at that time were getting their career.
Get in 20 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, when you left DC because of the pay cut, did a lot of other officers leave as well?
As I remember, a few others followed, went to different places, like went out to Fairfax, or guys who could. The older ones, you're kind of vested. It's kind of hard to leave, right? So the older ones never would, and I also think it was a different time. Guys, police department hop all the time now, right? They'll jump from 4 or 5 departments. That was not normal back then. Me leaving DC was a big deal, really, to be honest with you, because people were like, "You're leaving? Why are you leaving?"
Yeah, but a 10% pay cut, that's a massive cut.
Well, now, was your pay at the time, was it good and 90% would have been 90% of a good salary, or was it a shit salary and you couldn't just take 90% of a shit salary?
I made $25,108 when I hit the streets of DC. Oh, no, I'm sorry, $25,163. I got a pay raise when I got on the streets. 108 was when I was in the academy. And it did, I think
Oh, you got a $55 pay raise.
Woohoo!
Yeah, and I think then after a year I went to 26. If I remember correctly, it was like 26,363. But where you made your money was overtime.
Yeah.
Because DC was a federal district, so you had to paper your cases the next morning. It was just you had to be there the next morning. So you ratcheted up overtime and comp time like there was no tomorrow. And once you learned how to play the system and just keep ratcheting it up, that's what we did. And you learn the game. Oh, those are my cuffs on the suspect. Put me on the cans, which was the notice for court. And that's what guys would do. They go, I got the cuffs on him, Tommy. I got you. You take care of the paperwork. I'll transport him. No problem.
Yeah, lucky you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, but so when you went to how big? So give us some context. Where everybody knows where DC is. Give an idea. Where is Laurel, Maryland? How close is that to DC? And what was the population of Laurel compared to DC?
Oh, well, I can't remember the population of DC at the time, but Laurel had a population of 25,000 people, I think, at that time.
So you're a department of about what, 40 people, maybe?
I think we were at 50 at that time.
50?
Yeah. And then I started working. The good thing was when I got there, I got to work with a lot of the task forces. I worked with the DEA task force out of Baltimore, the Maryland task force that had the Maryland State Police and some FBI agents in it. I worked with the FBI Violent Crime Task Force because Laurel was still doing, real undercover. We worked out of an off-site. People really didn't know you. You drove unmarked cars. You didn't come to the station unless you had to. And if you came to the station, everybody made sure like you came in back doors. I mean, they tried to do it the right way as much as you could, right?
Where's Laurel in relation to DC?
It is north of DC, about 30 miles, 35 miles.
So you're kind of in that corridor between DC and Baltimore. So you've got a lot of crime, a lot of stuff going up and down the pipeline and 95 and stuff, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of shit. It's a lot of shit. I mean, it really is. It's a giant amount of shit between Baltimore and Washington.
Oh, my God. Well, having driven that, yes, it is. Yeah.
Are you in Montgomery County or PG County? Or
that was considered Prince George's County, but Laurel ran multiple counties. It ran Howard County, part of Howard County, part of Montgomery County. PG County was the bulk of it. And Howard PG, and Montgomery, Howard PG, Montgomery. Oh, and Anne Arundel County.
Okay.
So how the hell did you?
Wow.
So did you have to? I mean, how the hell did that work? You got a city that's covering 4 to 5 counties?
No, you had city limits, but Laurel extended beyond. There's Laurel City, which was inside this little area, and then as you expanded out, there was Laurel Anne Arundel County, Laurel, Howard County, Laurel, PG County.
It's
Laurel,
kind of
Montgomery.
like Alexandria and Arlington. I mean, you get that whole area down there where it kind of bleeds over,
Yeah.
little cities within cities. So how long were you on Laurel?
About 2.5 years. And,
I'm seeing a pattern here. So is that the amount of time you could take it, or is that about the amount of time they could take you?
I think a little of both. I think a little of both. And, so I applied. I guess I was working with a guy in Laurel, and his father-in-law was the head of forensics for DEA and FBI, and worked out a 600, 700 Army Navy drive. And he said, you don't belong here. You should go talk to my father-in-law. You should go to DEA. I said, that's where I want to go. I said, but they keep, and I had talked years ago. I had talked to Priscilla Lewis, who was a recruiter, and she said, you need to go get more experience. And then, when you're told that, you kind of get into a routine, and you're just like, should I call again? Should I not? And then I went and saw him. He said, look, there's going to be a big hiring thing coming up for DEA. He said, you should apply. And I said, okay. So I wrote this nice thank you note to him after going down and spending the afternoon with him, which turned out to be the greatest thing that I probably ever did, that thank you note. And
this was pre-email. This was like a real thank you note. You actually had to use pen and paper and an envelope, right?
Yes. I remember I sat down and typed it on an electric typewriter. And you type your name, and then you sign your name and put it in the envelope, and you send it to him at 600, 700 Army Navy Drive. And I sent it down there. And
you've already been through the spelling class at Metro PD. So, man, you're on top of the world right now.
You could spell arrest and police officer. You were good.
I was good. And then, I went and got the old SF 171s that you had to fill out, right? And you remember that.
Special form 171.
Oh my gosh. I think it's standard form 171.
Standard form, yeah. Standard
form.
form. Well, that too. SF 86, SF 85P, blah, blah, blah.
So I filled that out, and they tell you type it. So, again, this isn't a computer. There is no computer. So you're sticking it in, and you're rolling it, and you're typing it.
Now on your typewriter, did you have the newer version that actually had the backspace feature with the erasure tape so you could correct your mistakes?
Never fucking worked. Never fucking worked. I must have typed that SF 171 like 7 fucking times. I'll never forget. It drove me crazy. I did the whiteout. You had the whiteout, and you're painting it, and you're trying to make it work. So I applied in March. I'll never forget March of 95. March of 95. I applied. They started doing my background in August of 95.
So real quickly for the folks listening, when we talk about standard forms and stuff, the governments love to swear, but the SF 171 is the application for federal employment. So that is a whole background thing. And then if you get a security clearance, did you guys have to fill out an SF 86?
Yeah, but not until you got through to the 171. They brought you back down, and then you had to fill out all the other forms, like under their supervision of making sure you didn't fuck them up.
Steve, do you remember how many pages your SF 86 was?
I want to say 13.
But you lucky dog.
Depending on how many prior residences you had and family members and out of the country travel and all that kind of stuff.
Mine is 36 pages.
Holy shit.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, I had to explain a lot of shit. Lived in Iran. My dad was military, so we moved all over the place. When you're going back and trying to figure out, I had a different teacher. I had a teacher for kindergarten, first and second grade, a different teacher for third grade, a different teacher for fourth grade, two different teachers for fifth grade.
What's that say about you? Damn.
Well, it's my dad. It's not me, I've been kicked out of better places. But anyway, back to our regularly scheduled podcast here with you. So you're filling all this stuff out. You're typing the SF 171 for the 7th time. So.
Yeah. So I get it done, and I turn everything in, and in March of 95, and I get a call that they're going to start on my background in August of 95. And I get called to the Washington Field Division.
Now, is it a wet dream for the investigator, too? Because you basically lived in the same house all your life. You lived in the same area all your life.
Well, I would guess so, because that was because that's when the agents actually did the background investigations of the guys. There was no OPM investigator. Like, it went to that field division.
Which is the Office of Personnel and Management, which is the great place that got hacked and all of our stuff ended up in China, and all the SF-86s are now in China.
Correct. Yep. And so when you go back down there and the DEA agents are doing it, very few offices had a dedicated group of agents that did that. They didn't have the manpower to do that, or a boss. Most of the bosses were just like, see if he's decent, get him through, or if he's not, don't get him through.
Does he have a heartbeat? Is he breathing? Good, you're qualified. Let's go.
And at that time, you got to remember, so this is 95, end of 90, middle of 95, going into 96. DEA hadn't hired in forever. Okay, they were like doing maybe one class a year, Murph. I mean,
yeah, it was really slow.
It was really slow, and like when I went through the background investigation. So I got lucky. My wife's uncle was a DEA agent, so I knew a lot of different names of people and different things like that. I had worked on the task forces in Baltimore and DC. So when I go to do my background investigation, I know all three people basically on my background investigation. Not that I interacted with them every day, but I knew who they were. They knew who I was. Not that we were friends or anything like that. So it just made the process easy. And I'll never forget, like one time I go down there and I had taken the polygraph, and the polygraph was a shit show back then, right? Like it was 3 hours of hell. It was like getting a proctology exam.
And they also want to screw with you and mess with your mind and come in and say, we got an issue with one of these questions.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was lucky at Laurel. My former partner was a CIA police officer, right? And he goes, hey, look, just so you're ahead of the ball game on this, they're going to fuck with you about things. He goes, don't fucking admit to anything. Fuck them. Make them do the work.
Admit nothing, deny everything, make counter accusations.
Right. So you're going through that. It's just a giant shit show. But I get through it all, and I never forget. Like I had my background. My what do they call it? What's a neutral response on the polygraph?
I never had to take one, thank the good Lord.
Yeah, there's
you lucky dog. I'm trying to think of what it is. I think it's like no reaction or something,
inconclusive.
Inconclusive, I think they call. So mine came out inconclusive. Like during the whole polygraph, they were like, "Yeah, I'm going to have to send this off to have it reviewed because you're coming up inconclusive." And
did they accuse you of countermeasures, like taking pills?
Yeah. Do you know meditation?
Did you take pills? Are you?
Yeah, no, I'm telling you the truth. And there, there's all these little quips in there. Like the guy goes, "Did you ever cheat on a test?" And I go, "Yeah, I did. I cheated in high school. The Shakespeare quote we had to memorize and put down there." He goes, "I'm really disappointed in you." I was like, "Well, next time I got to learn Shakespeare, I'll call you."
Yeah, you'll get over it.
Yeah, fuck you. These guys are such dickheads.
You know who you remind me of right now with that statement? Did you ever watch Hill Street Blues?
Yeah.
Remember Detective Dennis Sipowicz?
Yeah. He was no. That was that was not Hill Street Blues. That was the New York. The other one. Hill Street Blues was with the former.
No. Sipowicz was on Hill Street Blues.
Nah.
You don't think so? No. Hey, we're gonna through the magic of Al Gore's amazing internet. We'll look it up. But the reason I was saying that, so. What happened is that he walks in one time. They've got a suspect in an interrogation room. And so he's saying, I want to talk to a lawyer. I want to talk to a lawyer. Now, this is stuff you could do back then. We probably couldn't do today. So he goes, okay, I'll take care of it. So what he did was he put on glasses. He brought in a briefcase and stuff. And all he said was, I hear you want to talk. And so the guy starts telling him everything. And then he finds out he's a cop. Well, he goes out and the district attorney's going, well, I'm not really comfortable with you doing this. And I'm not really comfortable with you doing that. He goes, hey, you got a card? He goes, yeah. He says, when your comfort becomes my concern, I'll call you. Yeah. And then he walked off.
Well, it's funny, like you say that, but when I was in New Jersey, one of the funny things we did one time, you have to waive. I was in New Jersey, so we locked up a guy guy in New York, and we would sit there and go, did he waive his right to being extradited from New York to New Jersey? And what we used to tell the guys is when we locked them up, we'd say, waive to New York. And so you go to court and they'd say, did he waive his right? Did he waive in New York? And you go, yeah, he waived to New York. He said, fucking goodbye. Fuck him.
Oh, so you know what?
Lawyers are probably cringing right now, but fuck them too. So
there you go.
Hey, we're both right. We're both right. But it was Dennis Franz actually was on Hill Street Blues, but he did not play Sipowicz on that one.
Right.
He did it on NYPD Blues.
That's
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're thinking of Mick Belker on
Belker,
Hill Street Blues.
like a dog.
Yeah.
I always remember on Hill Street Blues. I remember
the cocaine sniffing turkey. That's the one I remember.
I always remember Hill and Renko because the black guy who played Bobby Hill was a point guard for John Wooden at UCLA. I always remember that.
Well, I just love, and you had Sergeant Esterhaus, hey, let's roll and let's be careful out there. That was,
careful
you know
out
how many
there.
PD started saying that in their roll call after that? Life imitates art,
Yeah. So it was, I got through the polygraph and I was down at the Washington Field Division. I can't remember the background investigator's name. And he goes, man, we got to get this guy in the next class. I don't know what's happening here, but somebody over at headquarters wants this guy in the next fucking class. And I was just like, there's the guy from the thank you note. The thank you note paid dividends. And I ended up getting an offer in October of 95 to enter BA 102 in January of 1996.
So from flash to bang, from the time you applied until the time you got in, how long of a time frame was that?
6 months.
Oh, jeez.
Sorry, wait a minute. I'm sorry, 9 months. 9 months because I applied in March. March, and I got basically hired in October and was in the class in January.
Wow.
That's still fast. Murph, what did you have, 19 years to took you to get on?
It was 2 years. It was a solid 2 years. Hey, but you forgot to tell us something about when you were doing your polygraph. Didn't you have a story for him about a German Shepherd or something like that?
Oh, yeah. So
do we want to hear this story? I mean,
I don't know. Do we?
So during the polygraph, these
no secrets here. No secrets.
These jack-offs doing the polygraph always like to fuck with you and go, is there any, unnatural sex acts, as they're doing the interview or anything like that before they get to the yes or no questions. And I said, yeah, sometimes I like to give my German Shepherd a reach around, but I said, but any man who knows who has a German Shepherd knows that's necessary. And there was a lady who was observing in there, another agent, and she falls out fucking laughing. And the guy's looking at her, the guy doing the polygraph, and she's like, my husband's a canine guy. I get it. Because it's a joke, and it was just funny. And but here was the thing. My thing was I liked my job. So it's just like, whatever, if you hire me, you hire me. If you don't hire me, you don't hire me.
And you folks can see now the way this career is going to go because Tommy Cindric is like Ricky Gervais on, the Golden Globes. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care.
By the way, I was just finishing the last thing of Afterlife with Ricky Gervais. Watch it. It's a great show.
I'm on episode 2 now of season 3. So yeah. But he only does show with 3 seasons. The Office, 3 seasons. A couple of the other thing he did, 3 seasons. So
he's the fucking best. I love the irreverency. And that's why, you get to some of these things. It's just like, fuck you. Get a sense of humor. You know what I mean? Like, quit taking, I just find it funny when all these guys in charge take themselves so seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Warmth, you and Don Rickles,
Yeah. Get over it.
Get over it. So, hey, when you went to BA 102, so you're going kind of during the cold part. Was that at Quantico? Or
yes.
where were you at?
I was at Quantico. We were on different hallways, but we were mixed with the FBI at that time. It was so funny because, we're in our black black BDUs and our gray shirts, and the FBI, it's, they're in their khakis and their blue shirts, and it's like a college campus for them. I mean, you're just fucking like, you lucky bastards. And we're, if somebody walks down the hallway, you got to grab the fucking wall and things like that. I got lucky. I don't know if you guys
Wait
know.
a minute, who had to grab the wall? You did, or
Oh
the
yeah,
FBI
we
guys
had to
did?
grab the wall. You know, if one of the instructors came through, and you have to say good morning, sir, good afternoon, sir, whatever. You know, and if you didn't, they give you shit.
Mm-hmm.
You might end up running. You might end up getting fucking brought down and fucking chastised in front of everybody. You know, it just depended. But I had the greatest class counselor fucking ever when I was at Quantico, and it was Tommy Golden. I don't know if any of you know Tommy.
We were partners in Miami.
Tommy was the greatest guy in the world.
Still is.
Yeah, I mean, to have him as a class counselor when like everybody is like taking this shit like it's life and death, and Tommy comes up and he picked his group and I was in his group. We're throwing the football in the hallway. We're relaxing. We're talking shit. He goes, hey, I'm Mr. Golden when we're in front of everybody, but I'm Tommy when it's just us.
Yeah.
You know, and he was the best, and he made it a pleasurable experience. And the good thing is I still keep in touch with him. He lives out in West Virginia now. You know, I try and stop by if I can. I've done it a couple times on my way out to see my uncle out in Western PA. I stop by and see him because Tommy Golden he made that time very decent to deal with when you could have a lot of dickheads. And our class coordinator was Steve Griswold, who was another one of the all-time greats, if you know Steve. I mean, Steve.
Oh, yeah. He was in Miami also. Took down Manuel Noriega.
Yeah, Steve was one of the all-time greats, just a good fucking guy. If you know, he didn't take it all so serious where like it was life and death every day. If you fucked up, he'd call you in. I remember we were doing CS training and I was just like not taking any of it very seriously. And
so CS?
Confidential source. And I wasn't taking...
Because CS is also CS gas. There's CS training where they put you in a gas house and make you puke and choke.
Yeah, I wasn't taking it very seriously. And, you know, I was kind of... And they all knew I had been on task forces and had done a lot of DEA work. And I testified in federal court at that time. And I'll never forget, Steve Griswold calls me and he goes, hey, look, kid. He goes, play the game. You got to get through this. You got to do it. I can't have you fucking acting like an asshole in front of the other people. You got to do what you're supposed to do. And I was like, okay, gotcha. Check, copy.
You know, it's always great to get people who've got such a different perspective. I ran into an EOD guy one time, and you'll see some of these things on the internet, but, you know, same thing. I said, because he asked him, said, you know, you're dealing with explosives. How do you handle that? He says, it's very simple. It says, either I'm right or it's not my problem anymore, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and down there at the time, like we had some great instructors in the PT realm. We had, you know, Frank Drew, Kenny Danino, you know, old time New Yorkers, and then Brad Worrell, who was one of the most laid back guys. You know, we had a decent crew, and you know, we had some good instructors there. Ed Hendry, who did the law teaching, who was always like, "We'll be done in 20 minutes. You'll be off to lunch," and he could do his thing so fast and get you to remember it and move you on. You know,
yeah, you know what? I got to correct something here because I said Grizz was on the Noriega case. He wasn't. That was Steve Greeley. Sorry,
Greeley.
Grizz.
Yeah. Steve Grizz.
Hey, but you know, we normally make the one term I didn't have you define, but we have to put it in context. So you said PT. Now, most people might think that's physical training, but at DEA, that could also mean party time. So was it party time or physical training?
Depending on the time of day.
Yeah. Well, at the academy, it was physical training. I mean, I mean, so lots of push-ups, lots of sit-ups, you know, lots of running, you know, the normal stuff. And then, you know, really, I think the thing at the academy that DEA always did better than anybody else was firearms. They were really good. And
yeah.
You might remember this guy, Steve Murph. I had the great Brian Avery as my instructor.
Oh, yeah. We raced together in Miami also.
Yeah, he was my Bay instructor at firearms. And, you know, Brian had been a Prince George's County police officer. It's kind of funny. I was bouncing at a bar in Laurel when he came in one night as a PG County police officer. So I knew some stories about Brian. He used to give me shit all the time. I said, I remember you when you came in, and you know, and he'd say, you don't tell a fucking word.
Yeah,
you don't tell. And we would laugh, but he was a great instructor because, you know, firearms can be a very tense thing for some people. everybody in our bay could shoot, and Brian was he was a guy who kept it loose. He kept you relaxed. He was a super great guy. His brother Mark over at TVOC, when we would do the driving, another great guy, and Dave.
TVOC?
Yeah, tactical vehicle
operations course, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, but so something actually, Murph, tell him about the guy in your class, the one that checked out one day because he didn't know about firearms.
Oh man, we had this guy. He comes in. He's the biggest strapping guy. He is in phenomenal shape. Looks like a bodybuilder. Good looking, full head of hair, and chemist by education.
Dear God,
taking the first couple.
DEA?
Exactly. Takes the first couple of he's acing everything. I mean, he is squared away. So then we hit the range. We had only been in the academy maybe a week, 2 weeks. We come to class one day and his shit's gone. It's like, hey, what happened? Whatever his name, I can't remember his name now. And of course they don't tell you until you get to know everybody a little bit. And then it's like, what really happened? He's like, one of the counselors said, the dude didn't know that we carried guns in DEA. He was freaked out by carrying a weapon. He refused to carry a gun.
Dear God. Dear God.
So if you remember.
What do you think? We're fucking drug counselors?
Well, and if you remember, when you went through your interview, one of the questions they ask you, do you know you will have to carry a weapon and may be required to use it in the line of duty? That's where that came from.
Oh, my God. All the dumb questions come from somewhere, right? Like you would think people would.
There's a reason that there are things called precedents in court and everything else. That's why there's instructions on your charcoal lighter that says, do not stick your face in the charcoal lighter while lighting it. Yeah. Somebody did that, and some attorney had to write a warning for it.
Yeah, I tell you, I like the academy, though. I had fun there. I mean, I'll never forget, we had an ethics class, and I won't use her name. She was an instructor there, and she was the sexiest woman you'd ever seen, right? And she's giving the ethics class, and she'd sit, and I think she had some Latin flavor, right? I think she was Colombian by descent, and she would sit there and go, come to mama, baby. Like, she would talk about the undercover things, and guys are like climbing over their chairs because she's the sexiest woman on the face of the earth, and she's teaching fucking ethics, right? We're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, but you guys all paid attention, didn't you?
Oh, we all paid attention, man. She was gorgeous.
There's a method to the madness.
Steve, you'll appreciate this too, because have you ever been to the International Association of Chiefs of Police conference, Tommy?
I have.
So there's before COVID, but there's probably 15,000 people there, and everybody does everything to get people to their booths. Well, this one company got the Carolina Panther cheerleaders to be at their booth.
Oh, wow.
And to this day, you talk to people, what they remember is the Carolina Panthers. You know how many people remember whose booth it was?
None.
Zero.
Yeah. None.
Zero.
Yep.
So what we've established, Tommy, is like the Carolina Panther cheerleaders. You don't have any recollection about going through the DEA Academy, but you certainly remember the ethics class.
I remember the ethics class well.
And did you learn the lessons from the ethics class, or the only thing you remember is attending the ethics class?
I remember attending the ethics class. I remember everybody. It was our first. I'll tell you this. I thought it was. You guys are gonna somebody's gonna get pissed at me from DEA, but they're giving the ethics class, and I thought it was such fucking bullshit, right? Because they're sitting there going, you can't take a free cup of coffee if you go to 7-Eleven. If an informant brings you a teddy bear, you got to tell him, no, you can't take it, all this shit. And I was like, nah, that's not how you handle it. And I would sit there in the class. I'd have discussions about this. I said, that's not how you handle it. Informant gives you a teddy bear. You keep it in your fucking car. And then when you go do a search warrant and there's some little kid there, you give them the teddy bear. You don't demean people. You don't do that. I just never believed in that. That was another yank up by Steve Griswold to hey, dickhead, what you do on the street, is different.
Just nod your head and get through the damn academy.
Exactly. Steve was just like, quit being a dickhead. You
know who this reminds me of? Me.
Yeah.
I would do the same thing during the academy and the State Patrol Academy. Well, what if they did this? And what if they did that? Well, what about this? And what about that? And I finally had one guy come up to me and says, look, dude, this academy is long enough as it is. Let's just get through 16 weeks.
Exactly. We're all waiting to go on break, and you're asking more questions.
No. I was smart enough never to ask questions right before lunch break or before the end of the day. I would start early. I'd always make somebody else the patsy for that too, because you never want to be the last person between them and your food at dinner, or getting out of there. So, but we had to stay anyway. Back to our regularly scheduled podcast. So, you end up being a good boy and just play the game and get through the academy without any major. Wait a minute. We forgot to ask you the most important question about the academy. How many memos did you have to write?
Actually, not many, because I passed.
Well, wait a minute, not many.
I had a couple in there. I had a couple in there because remember when we used to do the box?
What, not many compared to who? Charles Manson? I mean, if he'd gone through the academy, what's not many? 2, 5, 10?
I would say like 3 or 4. And it was just mostly because like some of the ethics stuff when they were talking about that. Griswold was
now, wait a minute. I thought you paid attention in ethics.
I did pay attention to ethics, but because I argued, I had to write a memo. And then when I wasn't paying attention in CS class, confidential source handling class, I had to write a memo for that. I remember that. And then there were a couple other ones here and there, but nothing bad, nothing that caused any real problems. I mean, I actually enjoyed the academy. Because I was like, so I work out, I shoot, and I get to eat as much food as I want.
And you get paid.
And you get paid? You fucking kidding me? I was bringing home more money in the academy than I did as a cop. I was like, fuck, this is great.
This is great. If I can just get through the ethics class and pay attention, I'll be good.
But if you guys remember, this is 1996. This is when we were having those 3 feet snowstorms down there. So shoot, you're shooting in the snow, you're shoveling out, you're getting to shoot. And my wife is home pregnant, shoveling out the driveway at our house while I'm down at Quantico. And so her sensitivity toward people who sit there when they're pregnant and they go, oh, I feel so bad. She's like, I had 2 dogs I was walking and I was shoveling my own self out to go to work every day. She doesn't have a whole lot of sympathy when people go, I don't
my
feel
husband
good.
abandoned me.
Yes.
Abandoned me. Well, I hadn't moved to Virginia at that. I was still a detective, but Southwest Kansas, there were times to where we would actually close the highways. The only way you could get around was actually in National Guard half tracks. I remember doing that one time. But I will tell you, the biggest change that I saw when we moved out to Virginia is we were used to taking our kids. I had a Yukon, a GMC Yukon. You throw the kids in the vehicle. So what if the snow's up to their knees or up to their thigh? Doesn't matter. Throw them out. They go to school. They're fine. Here, they got 2 inches of snow. Schools were shut down for an entire week. I'm going, oh, yeah. What do you mean?
Well, Tommy, I had the other end of that. I was at the academy in the summer. Oh. So, and Morgan, you don't know this, but when you're outside on the range, you had to walk. If you're not sitting in the bleachers or on the line to shoot, you have to run everywhere you go. So it's 98 degrees and 100% humidity there at Quantico Marine Corps Base. It was hard to hold onto the weapon sometimes. You're sweating so bad.
I did that at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, 1979, June and July of 1979. Everywhere we went, it was 103 degrees, 100% humidity. Yeah. You're in combat boots and everything else, carrying an M16, and nobody stands.
Well, and he was talking about how the Bureau guys were treated there in their khaki pants and light blue shirts. Yep. So the Marine Corps base has, if it gets too hot and too humid, they put the black flags out. You're not supposed to run when the black flag's out. So we'd come out running out of the facility to go out to the track, and there's a black flag, and you're like, oh, we don't have to run outside today. And the instructors are like, get your happy ass down there on the track. There's a shower off real quick. We're running. We're gonna hit the trank tails today. You go run a 5-mile run.
Maybe we'll put a black flag out when you're chasing Pablo later on in Columbia. Yeah, you don't have to go out and chase LeRoux either, Tommy, because it's a black flag day.
Man, you didn't get any breaks.
Yeah, you just kind of laugh. I mean, I always loved. I mean, the FBI, and I have nothing against how they do their academy. I think they have they have their methodology, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think there is a certain, way of treating people and teaching people that is more conducive sometimes in a different atmosphere. So I don't have a problem with how they do it. I just kind of wished I would have been treated that way occasionally. but nobody looked at me and said, hey, Tommy, this is a college class. Enjoy yourself.
And I wouldn't look at you and say you're the sensitive kind of guy that's going to get your feelings hurt either. You don't look like that kind of guy.
No, I didn't have a whole lot of give a fucks then. I have none now. So,
Hey, well, as always as we found out through talking to people in the DEA Academy, at some point, and how did it work for you? Did you know where you were going when you hired on, or did you have to put in for it and they told you at the end. So how did you come about finding out about where your first post was going to be?
I can't remember. I think it was about 6 weeks in, something like that. They said they put out all the openings that were available to our class. And I looked at it and, I was trying to stay East Coast because all our family, mine and my wife's family was East Coast. So I was like, okay, if I can pull East Coast, that would be kind of the best go round all around for us. So it was kind of funny. So I put Newark, New Jersey as number one on my list.
My gosh.
Yeah. I put Newark, New Jersey as number one.
Why didn't you just put, North Korea on your list or, or Tehran, Iran? I mean, those would have been safer places than Newark.
No, Newark was the greatest thing I ever did for my career, believe it or not. And then I put Miami number 2 and Houston number 3. And, as I toy with it, as you go through the ups and downs of your marriage and life, sometimes you go, God damn, I wish I would have gone to Houston, or God damn, I wish I would have gone to Miami. But it just, from a personal perspective, right? Because, you be in the same area for so long, you get kind of tired of the same shit you look at and the same people. But I got Newark, and I was fortunate to go to beautiful Newark, New Jersey, and I loved every minute of my time there.
And we used to say, God bless you guys that want to go to Newark and New York. Let them go.
Yeah.
It takes a special kind of person to go up there.
Yeah.
Well, they don't talk like I do up there.
No, they don't. And it's kind of funny when you would hear guys, like when they would sit there, they saw Newark on the list and their eyes would get real big. And I was like, well, I'm going to put it number 1. They're like, oh, okay, good. There's only 2 openings there. Anybody else,
Any other suckers? Well, I mean, volunteers.
Yeah, and I was it worked out well for me, and I liked Newark. I was on limited or half entitlements. Remember when you moved? So because if you came from federal service, you get full entitlements where they would pay for your move and everything like that.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
So when I had to, and this was all under the Tom Constantine era of DEA.
Oh, we've heard that name before.
Yeah. Every DEA agent's corrupt. He was a dickhead, but
absolutely.
That's beside the point. And he hated Newark, New Jersey. If you remember, Murph, that's where he banished Mr. Coleman to John Coleman because he challenged him. I think Mr. Coleman was one of the principals at DEA at the time, maybe.
Yeah, he was way up there.
Yeah, and he challenged Constantine with fraud, waste, and abuse of being in charge, and he got sentenced to be the SAC in New Jersey, and no cars ever got fixed. Like they treated us like shit. I mean, when I got to Newark, I was the first new agent in like 5 years. Like the guy in my group who was the next most junior was a 13.5.
Wow. Hey, was Mike Agrifolio there?
Yes.
Super.
Yes.
I love that guy.
Aggravation. He was another great one.
I'm glad we could bring you guys together and have old home week here.
Yeah, but
this just makes me feel good.
Mikey's a good guy.
Yeah, Mike's a great guy. And like I said, Newark was great for me. I got to work really good cases. I had great boss. My first boss was Jimmy Capra.
Hey, we're going to get him on the show, Morgan, by the way. He's got a great story. Great story.
Is it about Tommy?
Well, probably would. I didn't think about that, but probably. But he was involved in this huge seizure out in L.A. We got to get him on the show.
Well, Jimmy, I used to send Jimmy an email every year. He used to call me the prodigal son. So I would always send him an email every year wherever he was working at the time, and we would just laugh. But Jimmy was was a true gentleman, and
absolutely,
he was the best boss a young guy could have asked for when you first came on, and because he would give you shit, but he would give you shit in a way to teach you so you learn the job the right way, and Look, Newark was not a warm and fuzzy place if you couldn't perform. There were talented fucking agents there. There were guys like Greg Hilton, Ralph Ebeling, John Post, just tremendous, John McCabe. They were just fantastic agents. And so if you could not hold your end of the bargain, you would not be well thought of. I remember when I made my first kilo seizure, and when I say that, meaning it was my case. I did it. I worked the informant. Not a lot of, no senior, like, this is what you're going to do, little guidance here and there, but you did it. I locked up all these people. I got it. The next day, it was like a rite of passage. Like, guys came up congratulating you, telling you what a good job you did. It was a big deal.
You've been accepted. Yeah,
you were accepted. You were one of the guys. And that was important. And it turned out to be a really important thing because, Murph, like the bosses in New Jersey were like, at that time, it was, Jimmy Capra, Tommy Harrigan, Tim Ogden.
Wow.
Tommy Ma.
Yeah. That's some big names in DEA.
Correct. And you getting to know those guys as a GS9, where they were your GS14s, it set your path. You had people you could reach out to. You knew people. John McCabe, he became my boss in Washington, D.C. So
Skippy. We called him Skippy.
John,
hey, real quick, Tommy, prior to that case, what was the biggest seizure of dope you had working the task forces and stuff that you were involved with? How big of a case had you made or been involved with before?
I had been involved in a case that got a kilo, but you're talking about 90, but it wasn't like multiple kilos, and I was just part of the case. I was maybe, like, if I was doing undercover, I was maybe buying 3-4 ounces. I wasn't doing the big time deal like that, and it would be normally sometimes they'd be getting it on a wiretap or a tip from an informant after I had done undercover. So it wasn't like I was like making huge seizures as a local cop. When I was in Maryland, I did good work. I did solid work. I mostly worked a lot of violence, but it's not like we were getting huge amounts. When I walked into New Jersey, the first case was a 17-kilo controlled delivery. I was like, what the fuck is that?
That's like our first case he did. They were doing, was it Turks and Caicos or whatever, 400 kilos. He goes, I didn't know there's not that much cocaine in the whole world.
Exactly.
Not at one time.
Yeah, they were bringing these guys up. They were flying them up from Louisiana to do this controlled delivery. I was like, what the fuck? This is what I signed on for. This greatest shit in the world.
When we had Jeff Moore on talking about Leo Sharp, in the mule case. He made a 15 or 16 kilo deal up in Detroit. He says, we have just put an end to drug trafficking in Michigan as we know it.
Yeah. But then what you start to learn, and John McCabe would always say this when we were working, he'd always go, we don't put dope in jail. We put people in jail. And you got to get rid of the people. You can seize all the dope you want, but you got to put people in jail. And John was like,
Excellent point.
That was John McCabeism. Yeah, that was a McCabeism, and everybody who worked for him in our Met team group, we all knew that. So,
well, I will tell you, I was part of a team that put dope in jail one time as a state trooper. Actually, it was the DEA. This is an old case, but they actually, out of Oklahoma City, they were shadowing a plane that had 800 pounds of weed on it. And they were in a King Air. And so they shadowed it to one of these little old Army Air Corps bases that were all over western Kansas and southwest Kansas. DEA actually used to have tripwires on their sensors so that if a plane landed, we'd know about it. Well, they're shadowing this one, and long story short, this thing had 800 pounds on it. It landed in Gray County. And so what they did was, rather than trying to take 800 pounds all the way back to Wichita or whatever, they put it in the old Gray County jail, which was the old strap iron jail. And so they have 800 pounds in there. First of all, it reeks. Second of all, they arrested about half the trustees they had because these guys figured out how to reach all the way through the strap iron.
They're pinching off the load there.
Yeah.
Bill Kramer was the sheriff at that time, and we're like, dude, you're the biggest fucking drug dealer in southwest Kansas. You know that.
That's so funny. That's funny. But you couldn't do that anywhere but in a sheriff's department, right? Because most police departments would have all these rules. Sheriff just goes, I'm the fucking boss. Lock it there.
Yeah, lock it. And that's what he did. And
that's why I love sheriffs. I love sheriffs. They're the greatest guys in the world because they're just like, it's my call.
we were joking 800 pounds became 400 pounds, which became 200 pounds. I said, are we going to have anything left by the time you guys get to trial? But anyway.
Hell no. It's like doing a reverse, right? The guy's digging into the kilo after you weigh it, getting it.
He goes, look at all the arrests we're making in Gray County, though. My numbers are going to look good this year. I think that's called entrapment, Bill. But anyway, back to our regularly scheduled podcast. So you're working Newark and you're working these cases now. But at some point you start moving up, right? So what are the things that you're doing that allow you to start taking on bigger cases and more responsibility? Because eventually we're going to talk about how you ended up in the Special Operations Division, the 960 group. But to get there, you got to be a performer. You just don't get there because you're cute, good looking, and the love of Jesus and your pretty blue eyes.
And I have none of that, so
yes.
Maybe the love of Jesus, but that's about
it. That's Clint Eastwood, right?
Yeah.
I got the badge, I got the gun, I got the love of Jesus and my pretty blue eyes, Clyde.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about what kind of things were you doing? What kind of a DEA agent were you that allowed you now to start moving up and doing those things? What were you doing that was different than everybody else?
So one of the things I did is I learned how to make relationships with some of the local PDs that really that nobody was working with. I worked with the Edison Police Department in Edison, New Jersey, and I basically got carte blanche with their narcotics team, and they were within Middlesex County, New Jersey. So I created this relationship with them where I started out doing, you just kept doing cases, right? And I would do cases and learn how DEA did cases. I would come back and put it on paper, and Jimmy Capper would give me shit about how I wrote something, or my senior partner would give me shit about how I wrote something, and you'd change it. And you just kept doing these small cases and small cases. And then, I did the Kilo case, which was a really nice one, and I was really proud of that. But then I got one. Jimmy Capper sent me to Klan Lab School. Why? Because nobody else wanted to fucking go, right? Like I was the only, and I lived in Maryland, and it was at Camp Upshur in Virginia. So he was like, "Hey, look, it's a week school." I did all three. I did advanced, so I did 2 weeks like at each one. Jimmy was like, "Look, it's close to home. This will be good for you." So that's why I got to go to Klan Lab School. Turned out to be a great thing for me. I learned a little bit about it, and so I did a case on some Filipino traffickers that were moving ice. I got into the informant, and I can't remember how we got the informant. I think she was handed to me by a local jurisdiction. I think the Edison guys handed her to me, if I remember correctly. And I started working because it was in Wayne, New Jersey. And, I started working this case, and we started buying meth and buying crystal meth. And it was a big deal because nobody had really seen it up there. It had been a long time. It was in the gay clubs. You would see some crystal meth in there, but it wasn't like a really big thing. And this informant she goes, "Look, I'm Filipino." She goes, "We like to smoke shabu," which is meth, crystal meth, "and we like to throw darts." And she goes, "That's what we do." And she was a nurse. And she said, "I can get you into all these people." So then, as I'm working this case, I get a call from Wayne.
Hey, real quick, Tommy, why did she cooperate with you? How did you end up? Is that something Edison PD did, or is that somebody you developed?
That was somebody Edison PD did, and they called me because she was talking about things in Newark, up on Manila
Was she
Avenue.
getting jammed up on another charge or anything?
They could have. They didn't, to keep her out and let her work and let her work for me, but she had to work for me. And they were up on Manila Avenue in Jersey City. And then we started hearing about all this stuff in Wayne, New Jersey. And we actually got a call about a weird smell from the Wayne Police Department. And I'll never forget it because, Murph, you might remember him, Jerry Spezial. Do you remember Jerry?
Spees, oh yeah.
Yeah, so Jerry Spezial, who was one hell of a task force officer, gets me hooked up with the Wayne guys, and he says, "Look," he says, "big deal, kid. You make this happen, right?" And this was it was good because we ended up taking off all this meth. It was a processing area where they would take the crystal meth, put it into denatured alcohol, dry it, and start the process again. So after we hit it was actually a Clan Lab cleanup too. And we had never done a Clan Lab cleanup, right? Like New Jersey had been a long time. I think Mike Pastachek did one down in Monmouth County. Like it was a super fun fucking site. And so we lock up a bunch of people. And one of the things we find in there, I'll never forget, I think it was Ronnie Delfidio climbs up in the ceiling and looks, he almost falls out of the ceiling. And it was an aborted fetus in formaldehyde, right?
Oh man!
And we find out that the woman the woman didn't bury it; she kept it. It was her aborted fetus. But
oh my God!
But here's the
gross.
fucking funny thing about. I mean, I hate to say funny thing about it. This is terrible. This is where the black humor comes in this shit, right? So it's in there. We seized it as evidence, but we turned it over to Jack Fasanella at the Northeast Regional Lab, who was one of the chemists who kept it in his office till the day he fucking retired.
Oh,
you know?
that's gross.
Yeah, it was just one of those fucking things. Like, it was just madness. And
but that's the kind of shit these people do. They get involved. I mean, you start getting involved in these drugs. People don't realize the path it takes you. You've got those websites out there that call the faces of meth. You watch people over time, how they change. It's terrible. And to do stuff like that, that's just, I mean, cops have black humor. But on the other hand, when you look at it just from a human side of it, you go, what does it take for somebody to do something like that?
Yeah, and look, I laugh about a lot of this because it's the only way I cope with a lot of it. Like I sit there and laugh. I mean, I probably got a shitload of PTSD in my background, you know, from all this different shit between the homicides that I've seen and things like that. So, you know, I kind of look at everything from a dark humor perspective. And, you know, we do that case. And then ultimately we work with, we're tracking this load of crystal meth that we think is coming out of the Philippines. And we get a tip on it that it's going to go up to Alaska and come down because that was the route of the plane. And it was going to make its way to Newark, New Jersey. And we ended up seizing 10 kilos of crystal meth, which was a big seizure at the time.
Man, at that time, that's huge.
So we took off, and it was kind of funny. We arrest all these people, do the seizures, work with Queens Narcotics because we hit a place over in Queens. And it was really a good case. It was a good, solid case. Guy came to the door with $100,000 in a bag. I mean, you know, they were not schooled traffickers like the Colombians or anybody like that. Comes with $100,000. Gets yanked, you know, Queens guy's like, get in here, you know, we seize his money, lock him up, make this case. And, you know, that was kind of my really next step, right, in doing this. And I made, and it was kind of funny though, but after the arrest, I'll tell you, we take him to the Passaic County Jail. And the Passaic County Jail, these jail guards are some of the biggest sons of bitches you ever seen in your life. I mean, when I tell you they are big, and they're all big weightlifters. And I mean,
are you talking about the prisoners or the
guards?
The guards?
Yeah,
okay.
Because it's the sheriff's department, so they're officers and corrections officers. And I mean, they have their own weightlifting team. I mean, they eat small children. That's how big these guys are, right? So I bring in, we've got a van, we've got a minivan. My partner, Greg Hilton, he was my senior partner. We got like 8 little Filipino guys stuffed in his minivan, and we drive them to the Passaic County Jail, and we get them out. We start marching them forward to him. And the guy looks at me. I'll never forget it. The guard, this monster, he looks at me. He goes, "You ought to be ashamed of your fucking self." He goes, these fucking little guys. He goes, "They're going to be washing somebody's socks in here, kid." You know, and I'm like, "Yeah, what are you going to do?"
Oh, it probably looked like a clown car pulling up and all these little guys piling out of there.
It was hysterical. It was hysterical. So that was kind of the you know, so I had done the one case, then I did this case, and then we did a case involving, you know, I kept getting these leads as a result of being the Clan Lab guy. And you would get filtered leads. And Diversion was working a case, and Diversion back then didn't do as much as they do now at DEA. And Diversion does pharmaceuticals and things like that. And
that's a real quick diversion. But just the other thing too is tell people what the diversion, because diversion are they're agents, but they're different kind of agents. They don't carry guns, right? They're just investigate pharmaceuticals, doctors, hospitals, stuff like that.
Yeah, and they did a lot of really good work back then, but they were not like they are now. The people who are doing it now at really high speed and really, 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 really good. And DEA has always gotten better and better at that. And even at the time, they were really good. They just didn't have the manpower, and their mandates, their authorities and mandates were weird. But we had one of the diversion guys, I can't remember his name, really good guy, comes over to me and he says, "Hey, look, I got this case going. I'm seeing all these, it's called mini thins. It was some sort of pseudoephedrine derivative, right? But you could extract the pseudoephedrine directly from this pill and it would go to make meth. And it was run by Syrian guys. Okay. Now, I didn't know what the fuck a Syrian was. Okay. Like you're sitting there and I'm like, okay, so we're doing surveillance on this place. And I mean, you're talking about huge boxes. And I'm sitting there, I'll never forget, with the senior partners, Ralph Ebeling and Greg Hilton, and we're watching this go down. They go, "You would think this is fucking coke the way it's going." They're bringing the boxes in. They repackage them in other boxes. They tape it up. Then they're taking it. They're going to take it down to the train station. They're riding in tandem. We don't understand, like I didn't understand the significance of it. And I don't think anybody in Newark really did at the time because we just weren't seeing a lot of meth. But then that was being shipped to the West Coast. And what we learned was that was going to the Mexican mafia, which was kind of interesting. And I didn't know shit about the Mexican mafia back then, right? So you start getting this education of things you've never been exposed to before. So if you think about it, I go from, a 1 kilo case to I'm doing crystal meth and this ice case dealing with Filipinos internationally. Then I'm doing this case with pseudoephedrine where I'm learning about how ephedrine is extracted from these pills to make methamphetamine, and in dealing with Syrians. And then, you're just kind of like, wow, you're learning. And then the next case in New Jersey, the really interesting one was I got a call about a guy getting GBL, and gamma butyrate, whatever, right?
Was that the testosterone? The steroid stuff or whatever?
No, that was a precursor to GHB, which is the date rape drug. Okay,
so Rohypnol and some other stuff.
GBL is a cement cleaner.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it was like an aerospace cleaner. They were saying. I remember that now that you said that. But
wait a minute. It's a. Do you ever wonder about just the ingenuity? If these criminals would just apply their ingenuity to real world problems, how the hell does somebody sit around and go one day and says, this aerospace cleaner, I think I'm going to turn it into a drug?
Unbelievable. And it eats your brain. It literally eats holes in your brain.
Yeah. And
it's nasty.
And this was one of these ones through bucket chemistry. You could make GHB. And I had gotten a call.
Tell us what bucket chemistry is.
You basically you would take some charcoal and pour the GHB into the charcoal and let it drip out, and it would come through and it would become, GHB. You take the GBL, move it through. It was very simple, like dummies like me could do it, right?
And they did it in a bucket, right?
They literally did it in a bucket.
Yeah.
And they were this guy was getting gallons of it. And how I learned about it is I got a call from a chemical company. And the beautiful thing was when they called me, I said, "Where's the guy live?" He goes, "Edison, New Jersey." Bingo. Tommy's in the game again because he's got the boys. I don't have to rally the DEA troops because, guys are working their own cases. So I call them and I said, "This is what's going on." They're like, "We're on it. We'll set up surveillance tomorrow." They were my buddies. I hung with them all the time. That's where I did most of my work. And so they set up surveillance. I tell Jimmy Capper what I got. He goes, "Oh, that's good. That's good. Let's get moving on this. Let's get surveillance down there." I get down there. The Edison guys are like, "Look, we'll get paper. You just tell us everything's set. Judge is on standby. Everything's on standby. When it gets delivered, we'll hit the door when you say to. Jimmy Capra goes, look, I've done a lot of these controlled deliveries. Let's just give the guy time. Let it get in there. Let's see if he gets it started. Give him like a half hour to start breaking shit open and start doing things and starting the chemistry process. So, okay.
Well, and speak to that for a second, because I'll lead you down a path which you answer. But one of the reasons to do that is because then the person can't feign ignorance. I don't know what was in the box. The box just showed up, right? But if you've opened up the box and you're starting to mess with it, now it's like, no, now you got knowledge. Because somebody could legitimately say, I could send you a package to your house and you go, I don't know what's in the box.
Yeah, and that was exactly it. And I didn't, well, and this goes to show you the experience level. At that time, you know that, but you're so excited to do the job. That's why having these senior guys around that go, hey, kid, take a breath. Okay, we got to give it a second when it gets in the door, because remember, we got to get them opening the box. And you go, oh, okay, that's right. And they kind of, again, it's to put the bit in your mouth and slow you down and make you think a little bit. So we hit this door, we go in there. And I'll never forget, like, it's open, nothing's in the bucket, but the bucket's out, everything's getting ready to get started. And the guy has alopecia. I had never seen somebody with alopecia before, right?
What is that?
It's where he has no hair, none on his body, like no eyebrows, no hair on his head, nothing, okay? And he's this big guy, and he's got on all black, like a black turtleneck, black pants, right? And I'm like, this guy is fucking weird, right? And they're searching the house. I'll never forget the guy from Edison, Fat Freddy. Fat Freddy goes, I got guns, right? So we got guns in the house. We had a shitload of guns in the house. We were kind of surprised. So then I get one of the guys, Jimmy Capra, one of the guys calls him and he says, what the fuck? And I go back there and we have a exam table, like a doctor's exam table. And on the table next to it is another, next to the examination table is another table with all sorts of female examination accoutrements, like speculums and things like that. So, and we found tapes, and apparently this guy was a serial rapist using the GHB and then bringing people back, and he would tape him doing examinations on drugged up women, right? And I did, I got it because of just the dumb shit I was doing. I was working a drug case, and we find this, and I'll never forget when we locked him up. The Middlesex County prosecutor's office kind of took over the case after that, because it was a bigger criminal case than it was a drug case. And, I got to be a little party to that, and I got to learn a little bit about that side of, the criminal world that I didn't have any real knowledge of.
I had real sick puppies out there.
Yeah. How many victims? Did you ever find out how many victims?
I never found out how many total victims. And I can't even remember what the guy got, but I will tell you this: that was one of the investigations I used to get my 13 packet approved.
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah. And then it was kind of neat. And the chemical world had another neat thing, because I kept getting calls. I had a guy trying to extract safrole from sassafras oil to create MDMA. I mean, crazy shit. So
people are just so creative. Hey, real quick, you talked about your 13 package. So for the uninitiated out there, you get promoted, right? You get hired on at a certain GS level, and then you move your way up. So to get to a 13, which is a more senior position, more money, you've got to put in a package. So just tell everybody real quick what you have to do to get promoted, and why that case was so important as part of your package. What did it demonstrate? So
here's the thing. So I came on as a 9, and you kind of automatically get your 11 and your 12, right? And then normally when you have your 12, you have to wait 3 years to get your 13, unless you can apply early. And that's the 13 for DEA is the journeyman grade. That's the highest you can be. You get step increases after 13, but you're kind of the top pay scale at that point.
Next step is a supervisor.
Correct. And so you have to put together a package if you want to be promoted early. displaying your competency as an investigator, and you have to write all these wonderful things about yourself and the cases you've done in order to do this case. And you basically have to say, look, I'm the greatest drug investigator in the entire fucking world.
Isn't that the way you normally wrote your reports anyway?
Well, I got to tell you, it was the most uncomfortable feeling in the world when you do it, because, you know, I'm working with these senior guys who are just guiding me along and teaching me, and you're like, and I remember Greg Hilton goes, bro, it's no problem. We all did it. We all got to do it, right? And I remember I wrote it the first time. Jimmy Capper takes it and he goes, kid, fucking do it again. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Write it fucking again. And I keep writing it and I keep writing it. And I must have written it 5 times before then, Jimmy.
Well, you're good at doing stuff like the SF 171 7 times.
He went through spelling class. He knows how to spell.
How big was this packet? When you say packet, we talking 5 pages, 10 pages, 15?
Oh, no. I think I was going to say it's like 40 pages, sometimes more, because you have to put supporting documents to the cases.
It's a file. It's a whole file.
Yeah, it's a big, I mean, I would say mine was like that thick. I mean, it was big. And Jimmy Cap.
What is that for guys? Is that 6 inches or what?
Maybe in Kansas. Maybe in Kansas. I don't know.
Yeah. But thank God Jimmy took care of me, and he helped me kind of finesse it and write it the right way. And, you know, and he pushed it through, and I got approved, and that was the big thing.
So how much time did you save yourself getting to the GS-13? A year and a half?
2 years. I got promoted right away. I was.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I got literally as soon as I was eligible after 1 year, I got it almost immediately after they approved it. So it was. I think it was retro. Were they retroactive? I can't remember, but I got it. I got it as soon as I could, and that was significant because that lets you get your step increase next, right? Like that's the next time you get your pay raise. So you want to get it early so you can get that next step increase. And
yeah, because in the federal service, for the folks, like I said, there's a lot of folks may not have done it. So you can get promoted to a 13, but then there's step 1, right, and step 2. So you've got interim steps between that and a 14. So it's not like you just get paid at a 13 and that's it until you get a 14. You've got ways to move your pay up incrementally, right?
Yes. Yes. And
right. And see, that's the benefit of working with senior guys with a lot of experience is they will help you get that 13. And it's a significant raise. You're at journeyman level now. It's you're a senior agent.
Yeah. And that was one of the big things, like we talked about being accepted. That's why you couldn't be a dickhead. Okay. You've got to work hard. Guys got to respect you. And they got to have a reason to want to help you. And I was fortunate. And I was fortunate that I worked with such good guys and I had good supervisors. And it, I couldn't, it was great. It was great.
Who evaluates your 13 package? Where does that go to?
Well, so the GS is first, and then he puts a cover letter on it. Then it goes
Which is the group supervisor,
Group supervisor. Then it goes to the assistant special agent in charge. He puts a cover letter on it. Then it goes to the SAC, and he puts a cover letter on it. Then it went down the headquarters to Murph, not OPR, but who was the group?
It was probably a section within inspections, I'm guessing.
It was. That's exactly it. It went to inspections, and there was a group within inspections who did it, and then they read everything and they give you the yay or nay on it. And normally, what happens is normally your GS knows somebody down at inspections. He goes, "Hey, my guy's thing's in there. Get it fucking approved for him. He's a good kid." And they normally move it along pretty quick as long as you have that rabbi who will make that phone call for you.
So it took a sign-off from a group supervisor, an ASAC, a SAC, and then
down
somebody in inspection.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
But if you didn't know somebody, if your boss didn't know somebody in inspections, you might sit for a while, and not because you not get it, not because you didn't deserve it, but just because they didn't get to it. And so you had to have somebody who made you a priority. So I was fortunate, Jimmy Capra.
There you go. Writing those letters helped you early on.
Well, it is. Herein lies the lesson. Don't be a dick.
There you go. And, Jimmy made it all the way up to chief of domestic operations. So he made it to the highest levels eventually.
Yeah. And it was funny because he was chief of ops when we were running the LeRoux case. So,
cool.
So I never got to see him when we were doing this case, but he used to tell Lou Millione, who was the boss, he goes, Jersey guy. That's because of me. The reason he's fucking this good, you know.
And Lou
Milione, there's a lot of truth to that.
Lou Milione is a name. If people will go back and listen to Zach's episode, which I believe Zach's episode, I have the list up right here, was episode 19, where we talked about Victor Boot, the Merchant of Death. So Lou Milione was involved in that case as well. So you'll see a lot of crossover between these cases.
As an update, Lou Milione is now the deputy administrator of DEA. He retired, and then the new administrator brought him on as deputy.
Yep.
Cool.
Good man. He's a good man.
Very good man.
Let's talk about your glide path, because eventually we're going to talk about the LeRoux case. But to do that, you've got to get into certain places. You've got to get into the Special Operations Division. I mean, you've got to get into this 960 group, which is kind of funny when people read about it. It's that very secretive, highly restricted 960 group, and you guys are going, fuck, what are they talking about? Let's talk about your glide path now. So you get your 13. What things are you working on between the time you get your 13 and before Special Operations starts becoming a reality for you?
So I put in a voluntary transfer and I headed home to the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area because my wife wanted to come home. We had a 3-year-old family, all the normal bullshit we all get fucking weighed down with during our lives, right? Normal shit. And I figured if my wife was happy, then I'd be able to work the way I wanted to work. So I ended up in Washington, D.C., and I went to work. I started out working in a regular division group there, which was fine. And then I moved over to MET, and I worked in the MET groups, and I did deployments. And ultimately...
MET as in the mobile enforcement teams?
Yeah, I apologize. Mobile enforcement teams.
That's okay, because we actually just did a Patreon episode. Steve's, we do our Case of the Month, which just came out on Patreon. By the way, Game of Crimes, or patreon.com/Game of Crimes. But Steve talked about a big MET case they did down in Clarksville, Tennessee. So these things all come together. So you're on the MET team, and you're taking guns and bad people off the street, aren't you?
Yeah, and I was working for it, and this is kind of how it works. John McCabe, who was one of the GS-13s in New Jersey, came down and became got promoted, was a staff coordinator at SOD, and then came over and became the GS-14 group supervisor of the MET team in Washington, D.C. And he and I knew each other. I became his backup, and I went to work for him, and we worked in DC, and our goal was we were working violent drug trafficking organizations, but we focused on helping develop witnesses that could be used in open homicide cases in Washington, D.C., so we could help out the homicide division at the same time. And we were pretty successful at it. We did a really good job, and that's a lot of credit to John, because John had the political clout to operate within DEA and get us certain things to make us more effective.
So, I mean, the great thing about it is with all of these relationships, this is what's serving you well from your time on DC, your time on Laurel, building the cases like in New Jersey, you're making relationships. And like you said, when I asked you, what was one of the things that helped get you in, obviously get you into SOD, and later, which it's this ability to build relationships, which also means informants, confidential sources. So you're now working the MET team in DC, and you're working with your buddy there. How long does that last? I'm
there until about 2003, 4, something like that.
And when did you start in DC?
1999. And a critical point of that in 1999 is when I started working with a guy named Eric Stouch, who we'll talk about later with the LeRoux case. Yeah. But yeah.
So we're all in. So the other thing too, we all have in common, we're all in. Well, were you in DC the day of 9/11?
I actually was getting ready to head to work when it happened, and I was actually at my house because my daughter was, I guess she was about 4 years old, when that happened, and know exactly. I was out in front of my yard. I was playing with her before I was getting ready to head to work, and I started driving into work, and they said, "Don't come in." Don't come in yet. We're not going to do anything yet. We got to see what's going on. And everybody was kind of on freeze. And that was a really weird time. It was weird because you felt helpless. You wanted to help, but you felt helpless because you wanted to go in. What can I do? How can I help? How can I make a difference? And it was really frustrating when it happened, because everybody wants to be there to do the right thing and help.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. and we've all talked about it too. I was in the Reagan building, supposed to be in the Pentagon meeting switch. You walk across the Roslyn Bridge, I can see the Pentagon burning as I'm walking across going into Roslyn, and yeah, by the way, past some little bastards on the toll road that morning. I'm driving into DC. Those guys are driving out to Dulles Airport, the ones that go from there. So it's like, and you're right, it becomes kind of personal, but you're kind of in this weird thing. And that's the reason I wanted to ask you, because it's kind of weird because look, life still goes on. There's investigations that are going on, but we're kind of in this unique bubble of where we don't know what's going to happen next or what's going to go on. And so what happens to your investigations? How long does it take before you're back, in some kind of a rhythm from an investigative standpoint?
It takes a while. I would say it took about 8 weeks. You kind of, because they were like, oh, we might need you to go down to the Pentagon and help with cleanup, or you can volunteer for that. We might need you to be an air marshal, and you can volunteer for that. And you put your name on these lists to see in case they need you. And it just you kind of lose a lot of momentum, but to be quite honest, the world lost a lot of momentum, and even the drug traffickers lost momentum.
Oh yeah, because everything is shut down, borders, airlines, just it impacts everybody.
Yeah, and guys, street drug guys get a little more creative at that time. They start cutting their shit a little bit more. They make it a little bit weaker, trying to ride out when shit's going to get moving again, how things are going to be moving again. Because, it's just a different game for a while. When I say that, I'm meaning selling and moving drugs. So, and especially, I was on meth, so it is kind of more of a street level thing. Yeah, you can work up to larger guys on the street and suppliers on the street, but you're working the streets, so it's a different animal. It's a different animal.
Did you change did this make you change your focus? Did you guys start looking at everybody going, are you the next fucking Osama bin Laden? Are you the next, Nawaf al-Hazmi or Muhammad Atta that's out there?
So we just kind of stayed focused on what we did because we were working the urban areas. I was in the 6th District of the Metropolitan Police Department. Our focus was that. So from a Met perspective, it doesn't change your focus unless the bosses above you, because it's beyond my pay grade to make a decision where Tommy ends up. My job is to do my job, which is hard to take. Because you want to be in the middle of it, but that's not your place. Some guys took it all on as a personal challenge, and now we're going to look for the next Muhammad Attas. I just kept doing what I do, which was working drug cases and working in D.C. and just trying to do the best I can at what I do.
Well, you must have had some success during that time too, because I remember, we watched the homicide rate go up. I don't remember who was chief because you had Ramsey at the time. Kathy Lanier came in, at some time later, but at some point, the homicide rate peaked in DC, and it actually started coming down to where I think like 5 or 6 years ago, before it started coming back up again, they actually hit, I think they were either at 100 or below 100 for the first time in a couple decades.
Yeah, and there was a lot of success there, but here's the secret nobody will talk about, but I'll tell you guys, you can thank Mayor Anthony Williams for that. Okay, Mayor Anthony Williams would empty out these public housing projects and bulldoze them. And what he did is he gave up the Section 8 vouchers. And, there's a guy who was on Mayor Williams' protection detail, a D.C. police officer, who was sitting there one day when Mayor Williams was talking to Wayne Curry, who was the county executive of Prince George's County. And the story goes, on the phone call, Wayne Curry goes, man, I just got, however many more people on my Section 8 rolls. And what people don't understand is that's guaranteed money from the federal government for counties to have to pay rent for people being in there. And Mayor Williams goes, yeah, I just got rid of that same percentage. Okay. What Mayor Williams did is he went and believed in gentrification of D.C. He was put in there by a D.C. control board. It was controlled by the federal government. So the whole change in D.C. occurred under Anthony Williams because he said, nah, we're not going to do this shit anymore. We're going to clean this up, and I'm going to bulldoze these places. And I'm going to get taxpayers in here.
He was the guy with the bow tie, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Brilliant guy. Knew how to manage everything. And look, I mean, you can't argue. DC is a cosmopolitan city, second to none now. A lot of the really bad areas have gotten much better. That area down by
You
11th.
look Anacostia, you look at the development along the river where the ballpark is now, stuff like that. There's a lot. I've seen just a lot of change in the 21 years I've been out here.
100%. And, so you can argue various points of that, and different people will for various reasons. But the success came because of aggressive policing, and Mayor Anthony Williams deciding to make a change in the trajectory of the city and not go down the same road of public housing and trying to get more tax-paying people in there. And look, does that displace some poor people? Yeah, it does, and it's a shame it does. But it's the nature of the beast. It's what these cities do. They grow and contract and grow and contract. So
yeah, Cabrini Green I think is a big one in Chicago area too. That was a huge
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we used to, there's not much you can do about some of this. Some of this, you can get into the whole aspects of this, whether it's social, racial, whatever it is. I don't know. I know that I knew a lot of really good poor people when I was working the streets, who did the best they could. I also knew there were a lot of people who took advantage. I mean, well,
and the one thing we should point out is while a big percentage of Washington, D.C. is black, Anthony Williams was black too. So you couldn't really leverage a racial angle against Anthony Williams because he was the same race as that he was dealing with. But I tell you, I remember that but that didn't stop people from well, we want this and want that. But to your point, I think it had outlived its usefulness, the Section 8, because it was no longer about helping people. Instead, what it was doing was institutionalizing criminal behavior and people who were taking advantage of all these other people to run guns and drugs and dope. And to your point, the neighborhoods, the reason they could control it, because they controlled the Section 8 housing too. They controlled their area.
Yeah. Yep.
And they terrorized people. And Ramsey was the chief at that. I just looked it up. He was the chief back then too, and he was African American as well.
Yes. And that's where you start to, you can have these debates, but you have to have real healthy debates about what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. And I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. I mean, I always go, that's a lot of the stuff is well above my pay grade. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie End of Shift with Jake Gyllenhaal, and there's this little mantra at the beginning of that where he says, I am not paid to have an opinion. I am simply here to enforce the law. And he goes through this whole thing. And I think that's what people forget. As a law enforcement officer, I'm not there to sit there and argue with you about what's valid or what's not valid. I'm simply there enforcing a law. That's what it is. And in a civilized society, that's what we do. So
I used to have that all the time. And I'll tell you, but the toughest ones to have that conversation with, have you ever dealt with anybody from the Posse Comitatus? Or the sovereign citizens?
Oh, the sovereign. Yeah, I am a man of blood, and yeah.
I'm a traveler. And look, it's like I get it, but it's like what doesn't matter. And at some point you can't reason with certain people. They want to argue with you. I found one of the fastest ways to stop arguments, especially as a trooper in Southwest Kansas, when it's like today, like 14 fucking degrees and the wind is blowing 15 miles an hour. Sir, step to the back of the vehicle for me. It's for safety. Step back here. They're outside for about 2 minutes and they're like, what? Just let me sign. No, sir. I got to explain this whole ticket to you. After they're thoroughly frozen, you put them back in the car. They don't want to argue so much when they're freezing their nuts off.
Yeah, I took a different approach. I would look at the bad guys if we were sitting there either doing an interview or something like that, and they'd be giving us shit. I said, "Do you need a hug?" And they'd look at you. I'd be like, I really think you need a hug. I mean, we're all God's children here. Do you want me to give you a hug?
And they weren't sure whether to believe you or think you're jacking with them,
yeah,
right?
They just would sit there. They this confounded look on their face. And I just found a lot of times, like when you talk to people, and they'd be like, "Oh, fuck you, man." And you just start laughing because everybody starts laughing then, and it lightens the moment. It's not serious, and things that could have escalated don't escalate, and it doesn't have to.
I learned from a training officer in Salina, Kansas, where back before domestic violence was treated the way it is now, but even then you'd have these situations. One of his favorite tactics, he'd be in there, and they'd be yelling back and forth. He says, "Excuse me for a second. Do you guys have any peanut butter? Because do you have any peanut butter? And they all of a sudden, what happens was it was a great technique. He made them focus on him instead of each other, and then they both would agree. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you asking for peanut butter?
Listen, my one of my sergeants in DC, who is my best friend, who I hunt with, I will tell you this story. This is one of the funniest things. We got a call for a violent domestic in the projects. He comes over the radio, Cruiser 223, do not enter. I'll be there shortly. He gets right around the corner. We go in with him. Everybody's yelling. It's mayhem. Mayhem. We're all, I'm like, shut up. Nobody's listening. He sticks his finger up his fucking nose. And they go, everybody stops. And he digs out this booger and he starts rolling it between his fingers.
Oh.
And he's having this conversation about behavior. Right?
Oh, jeez.
And he gets done. He says, everybody's going to behave here the rest of the night, correct? Yeah. And he's just sitting there like this, right? Holding this. Because they're wondering if he's going to flick it on the floor. What the fuck he's going to do. What are you going to do? Yeah, what's he fucking going to do? And we walk out and he goes, pip. He goes, job done, boys. And we were like, what the fuck? You know?
What the hell's wrong with you?
I deployed a tactical booger to stop the violent situation.
Oh, my God. I'll never forget that. It was the funniest fucking thing I had ever seen in my life.
Steve, all I want to know is, do you think he maintained his reconnoiter? And for folks who haven't followed us, that is one of our favorite lines. We actually, Tom, you don't know this, but we did the movie review on our Patreon channel of Die Hard, greatest Christmas movie ever made. Yeah. Let's just get that out there. But we actually had one of the guys from LA SWAT, the guy that was involved in the North Hollywood shootout that took out the guys, Rick Massa. He was our expert commentator. And so we asked him, we said, have you ever heard that before at LAPD SWAT? Maintain your reconnoiter. He goes, never fucking heard that before.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what it means.
No.
Anyway, we digress. So getting back into your glide path into SOD. So, I mean, you're working this stuff. You're in DC up until 2004.
And then I had the Baltimore after that.
Why?
Well, so my mom, I guess this is 2004-ish, 2005-ish, right around there. My mom had just come back from London, England. She had been assigned there with NSA. And she comes back and she's diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a blood cancer. And where she was going to live at the time was near us. And Baltimore was a little more convenient for me to help with my mom. And look, I'll be honest.
Was she going to Johns Hopkins or anything?
She was going to Hopkins. And she didn't have to go all the way downtown because they have satellite offices of Hopkins in Columbia and things like that. But it was easier for me. And like I said, to be honest, who ended up taking on the brunt of that burden was my wife. My wife would take my mom a lot more than I would because, I was still working. But Baltimore was an easier commute and was easier for me to be with my mom and do things if necessary. But like I said, my wife took the brunt of that burden.
Which usually happens in the home. The wives or the spouses end up with all that responsibility.
Yeah. And look, like I tell people that, I didn't want my mom to die, but the last, 5-6 years of her life were a tremendous blessing. She ate dinner with us, several nights a week, every Sunday. My daughters, she's like Mary Poppins to my daughters. It was a tremendous blessing. The time we got to spend with her.
Yeah.
So. Well, and people realize too, this job takes a toll on you. It takes a toll on the families, like Jay Dobbins said in our interview with him.
Oh, yeah.
You inflict a lot of battle damage on your families. And so the fact that you could be there for that, for me, one of the greatest things for me, my mom, we had to put her, well, we didn't have to put her, but she moved into an assisted living facility, had to sell her house. She had part of her lung removed, emphysema. So really challenging. But I was out a week before that. They had a huge snowstorm. We had just moved her into this assisted living facility. Power was out in the little town I was at. Power went out over in Manhattan, Kansas. But I got to be there for her, and a week later she passed away unexpectedly. And it's like, you just gotta be blessed that you have that kind of time with them.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, my time in Baltimore, I had such tremendous friends, and I was in such a tremendous group, like when my mom died, and, they were the most supportive thing to me. I mean, my family's always supportive. My wife and my kids are always there. But here, when I retired, my daughter said to me, I said, I feel kind of choked up. It was like my oldest one was second to my last day. And she goes, well, you spent more time with them during your life, Dad, than us. And she wasn't saying it to take a shot. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
And, those guys are some of my best friends, and I talk to them, and I'm fortunate to have had them as friends during those times.
It was the same on my end after I retired. Especially once you get in a supervisory role, you have a little bit more leniency to make events with your kids. And I thought I did a good job, but, after I retired, you really have a chance now to sit down and get to know your family well, and they've grown, and you've missed so much of their lives. And it was the same thing. They didn't mean it to be derogatory. It's just like, yeah, you were never around, Dad.
Yep.
It's like, wow.
All right, this is getting too fucking serious, man. We got. All right, man. This is not Dr. Phil. Okay.
Okay.
Let's go back up. Let's talk some shit now. So.
Okay.
So you're in Baltimore, and look, we get it. It's a tough thing. A father dying is one thing, but a mother is a special place in her heart, especially for a son. How did that impact you when you started thinking about your next assignment?
So I finished in Baltimore. I was very fortunate in Baltimore. I was part of really, really good cases. I was one of the lead investigators on a prison gang case that spanned over a couple years. Home invasion robbery cases. Baltimore was a great place for me, kind of like Newark, New Jersey was. But I'm kind of at the end, and I'm doing a lot of soul searching at this time, and I didn't really take a lot of time for myself during the lead up to 2010, right? Like I started in 1990, it's 2010, and what am I doing, right?
Well, you've got 25 years on total by this time, right? Because you got 5 years from the PD, right? And then.
Well, no, I have 20 years on at that time.
Oh, 20 years? Okay.
I started in 1990, so it's my first academy.
Oh, that's right.
Class.
Then you got DEA later, right?
Yeah, so I got 20 years in, which a lot of police departments guys are punching out, right? So I got 20 years in, and one of the things I was like, I'm not feeling, tremendously satisfied with where I'm at, and it's not like I hated it. I had no reason to leave Baltimore. I had great friends, great prosecutors I worked with. Couldn't ask for much more, but I got a call from Eric Stouch, and he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, look, I am part of the, he's down at SOD. He's in the BIU groups. It was 960 at the time, and he says." A bilateral investigation unit, meaning no investigation is done by ourselves unilaterally without counterpart assistance. Okay, so you're not going in there like the CIA and running some quiet operation that nobody is aware of. You're working with the law enforcement counterparts of whatever country you're in. So Eric says, he goes, I think you'd fit in here. He goes, it kind of fits your how you do things. Because I like things a little different. We used to do Hobbs Act robbery cases where we'd, that's the old Red Rum deal where we'd put the Colombians in the warehouse with all the cocaine, and we'd have a robbery crew come in and try and rob them, and we catch everybody, that kind of stuff. So,
well, real quick, too, just let people know, too, the Hobbs Act, one of the great things about that federal law is that if you rob, for example, a Wendy's, if they wanted to be pricks, they could charge you with the Hobbs Act because Wendy's is involved in interstate commerce, and that provided the federal nexus for them to come in and make a federal case against you for robbing a Wendy's.
Yes, that's the whole thing. It's the Commerce Clause, right? And that's the good thing. So, that was kind of, I like to do things like that. I like different. I didn't like everybody can just get dope. You go buy.
Yeah, and you thought I was just another pretty face and didn't know all of these things you're slinging at me. Go ahead.
We never thought that. We never thought that about you, Morgan.
Murph said some things offline, but we won't talk about that.
Just remember, I'm like the NSA. Everything is recorded.
Hey, Tommy, too. So you're talking about the BIU, and there's two groups, 959 and 960. Can you explain to the listeners what those numbers represent and what's the difference?
So they're statute related, and the 959 focused on drugs coming in and out of the United States. I can't remember the exact. I'm trying to remember. It was conspiracy to import into the United States drugs was the cocaine, whatever, was the 959 charge. And normally the 960 charge dealt with material support to a terrorist organization. And we used that because at the time that came up post 9/11, because the Taliban was using drug money to fuel a lot of, or pay for a lot of its terrorist organization.
Opium, man. They were the opium kings. I mean, it's,
Oh yeah.
Well, it's that, and then you had Hezbollah, which I'm sure Zach talked to you about, and Hezbollah involved directly with the Colombians and the Mexicans, and so the terrorist organizations got heavily involved in drug trafficking. Although the CIA didn't believe it for so long, because terrorists don't sell drugs. They are only true believers.
And it was the same when we had Escobar. They didn't think that FARC was involved in providing protection at cocaine labs.
Now FARC is involved in what, half the distribution of cocaine in the world now?
Well,
they're phenomenal.
Wasn't that part of the peace agreement they came to? Wasn't that like part of the peace agreement?
Which
is
time?
It kind of like, well, it's just like a minor incursion. If you just deal dope, we're good, but don't get into terrorism again.
It's the same bullshit that's going to happen in Afghanistan, thanks to our beloved Joe Biden. So, but I digress.
The previous message is neither supported nor denied by the current hosts of this podcast, but we try to remain a little bit neutral, but our guests can go anywhere they want to.
And we pick on everybody.
And don't get me wrong, I'll pick on Trump a second too, because he's the one who had the meeting with the people in Qatar to try and pull us out first. So he was an idiot too about that. They could have done this the right way, and neither one of them did. But that, again, I digress. So I finished in Baltimore. Stouch calls me and he says, "Hey, you should put in for this job." So I said, okay. So I talked to, again, Lou Millions to GS, a name you guys said have been heard before. And I called Lou and I talked to him about the job, and it's a lot of traveling. And so I go home and I talk to my wife, and she says, "Look, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it." She goes, "I don't think you're going to like the traveling." And I said, "Well, we'll give it a shot."
That is a dangerous thing for a wife to go, "Okay, if you want to do it, that's fine with me, honey." Right?
Look, I got to be honest with you. My wife's a little different. I mean, like she's like, she really means that. I mean, my wife is not one who waits for the sun to rise and set on fucking where I'm at. Okay. My girls got horses. They're busy. My wife rides horses. My wife's involved in the U.S. Equestrian Federation. She's involved in these things at these different farms. She's got her own life going on. And, so
she doesn't have time for your shit. So go do whatever you want to do.
Just keep making sure the paycheck gets direct
deposit. Make sure
deposit.
the check clears to the bank and we're good. The mortgage is paid. We're good. Go do your thing, pal.
I think we're married to sisters here.
Yeah. I mean, she was just like that. So it was a good thing. So I applied, and it took a little bit. Well, I shouldn't say it took a little bit. I guess I got there in October. I can't remember when Stouch called me. He called me the summer of 2011. I got there, I guess, in like October of 2011.
Well, so what kind of to put it in perspective, tell me if this analogy is correct or incorrect or sort of spot on. I think of SOD kind of like the way SEAL Team 6 is to the Navy SEALs. There's a lot of SEAL teams. They're all good operators. But SEAL Team 6 is a step above the other folks in terms of the assignments they're asked to take on, their skills, their abilities, because it was SEAL Team 6 who went after bin Laden. It's SEAL Team 6 who's been involved in several of the operations, kind of like Delta, and stuff like that. Is that a fair analogy?
It kind of. I mean, what I would say is what you have, because there's a lot of guys who are really talented out there doing good work in various cities around the world. What we have at SOD, you have really good guys working there who are just as talented as anybody else in these cities. And probably, in New York, it's DEA, some guys who are, they're all on par, but you would be at the top level of New York. But the difference is SOD has resources. And when you have resources, it makes a difference in what you can do. And that becomes the difference between arresting a Victor Boot and things like that.
You might have resources too, but not everybody is cut out to be on SOD either. So you might be doing good work in other areas. But what is the mentality or the mindset they're looking for people who come to SOD?
They want you to work. They want you to work independently. And the only measure of success is an indictment and arrest. An indictment's great, but the arrest has to take place and you have to get that person back to the United States to face charges. If you're not doing that, you have no business there.
It's not just pushing paper. It's actually making the arrest, bringing the person back to face, you don't control what happens after that, but they got to be back in the U.S.
Yeah, the goal is if there's some things you don't control, such as an extradition treaty or things like that get very.
And that could take, like in the case of Victor Boot. What was that, Steve? Zach said it took 2 years or something to get Victor back?
At least. I think it was longer than that. It was amazing how long it took.
3 years, yeah. Biggest criminals. You just got to admire the work they're doing on this so far. There's a lot of great information coming out in part 2 on Thursday. In the meantime, go visit our webpage, gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got a lot of great stuff over there. We've got our book page. We've got merch. We've got a lot of pictures from this episode that'll be there as well. Also, visit us on the socials at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. And go visit us at patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We have a ton of great content. Our new segment, 911, What's Your Emergency? We got a lot of good positive feedback about that, so we're doing that. And stay tuned. We got some exclusive access to Dave and Chris. You're going to hear about those two guys. They were the inspiration for Season 3 on Narcos and taking down the Cali cartel. Until then, make sure you tune in this coming Thursday for part 2 of Tommy Cindric and hunting Paul LeRoux. And thank you once again for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes.